Board of Trustees for Thursday, September 24th to order. Thank you all for being here tonight. So as we go through our agenda, the first thing we have are any agenda additions or changes for tonight. Staff, is there anything you have?
That's funny because that's what Greg was going to do, and he's having computer trouble. I think we updated a document for you guys. It's just an update, so no changes to the agenda as such.
The items from George for... Yeah. Oh, George is with us now.
Yeah.
There were some items that George had sent out to be added to the agenda.
Right.
I can try and find those.
No, I just emailed them to everybody on the board, Andrew. I emailed them to Greg earlier and Tammy, and they said they were going to send them out, and I thought they did, and it maybe something got messed up. I don't know. So I just emailed them all again. And if you didn't get your email, or if you can't get it, let me know, and I can probably do something else, or I can try to put them up on the board myself or something like that.
They are in the packet.
Yep.
Yeah, but are they the updated? They're ones that were edited this morning.
Oh.
So I know that there were some that I know I had some edits that hadn't made it in yet.
That's what I'm talking about. These were last minute edits that I got yesterday. So I made the edits this morning and sent them off this morning, like 8 o'clock this morning, and they should have all gotten to you, and I don't know what happened. So I sent them out again.
So I'm just seeing that there's a revised agenda that was sent to us. I didn't get to check my email earlier, but there's a revised agenda that was sent at 2 o'clock with the packet. Does that have it, George?
I haven't seen that, Amber. I don't know. I've been having PC just with this PC, not my other PCs, but this PC in particular seems to be, kind of shutting down a little bit. So I kind of left it alone so I could get on the meeting tonight. I don't know. I know that the ones I just emailed you, like literally 5 minutes ago, to each one of you, those are the most up-to-date, most carefully edited ones, most recently edited ones. So those are the correct ones.
I've got them. I mean, I can see them, George. In other words, I got your email.
Okay.
For the sake of tonight's meeting, I can forward these to Evan, to Greg.
There you go.
So that way we can make sure that what gets into the official packet or the official meeting is the right stuff. So bear with me while I get these in.
Andrew, this is Sarah. If you want to forward them to me too, I can make sure to display them at the right time. Please.
I'll also throw Tammy in here as well.
The whole crew.
Yeah. There we go. All right, so we have the attachments are a PowerPoint, 2 Word documents, one called draft script for merger video, and other questions and answers that were sent out by George, and I just forwarded on to staff. So there are those agenda additions, and those would go for item 5.
H.
Yes, 5H.
I have a couple of questions about the digitization grant that I don't think are make or break, but I don't know if that means it needs to come out and go into BI, or if we can.
So that would come. Yeah, let's just pull that out then. Let's put that at 5K. So Raj, if you can do me a favor, if you can try and remember that when we get to that point of the meeting.
5K, got it.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other agenda additions or changes? All right. Seeing none, would someone like to make a motion to amend the agenda?
So moved.
Okay. Second.
Oops. So George got that. Raj, I think George got the motion. Raj, you seconded. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. And we will now move into public to be heard. So this is a portion of the meeting where if somebody wishes to speak to the board about something that is not on the agenda, now is the time to do so. Again, if it is an item that is on the agenda, we will make sure there is time for public input on that. And so we ask that you please wait until that point in time. If you would like to speak, please let me know you would like to speak, and I will make sure that you get your opportunity. We will take a 30-second pause to allow for ample time for that to happen, and I will start that pause now. And so if you'd like to speak, just let me know. I should clarify, if you're using Teams, you can raise your hand. You can also type in the chat box. Those are two ways to let me know. If you're joining us by phone, just state your name and that you'd like to speak. Okay. So there is nobody requesting to chat about the portion of the meeting or about non-agenda items. So now I clicked on that chat that just came in, and now I need to figure out how to get back to the camera so I can see what's being seen right now. There we go. I have to admit, it looks like Microsoft Teams has changed their layout a little bit.
Yeah.
This is my first time navigating that with this change, so please bear with me. I'll apologize now if I screwed this up. So that will bring us to agenda item 5A, a discussion of tree farm operation for the tree farm board president, and I do believe I have seen Jake Haneke with us. Hello, Jake.
Good evening.
It's nice to have you join us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
As a slight introduction, Jake, you are the board president for the tree farm. The tree farm, for those who are not familiar, is a property that is along Old Colchester Road that the village trustees and the town select board jointly own. We have an agreement with the tree farm management group. I'm just going to give the 100,000 foot view of this to oversee the day-to-day, to oversee the management of the property. We are the owners. As such, one of the things I want to make sure is very explicit tonight is we are joint owners in this with the town select board. We are not sole owners, so we are half of the voice. I know it would have been great to have this meeting with both the select board joining us tonight. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. I'll apologize for that. I didn't catch that until late yesterday. And so as such, whatever we say, it's half of the perspective.
Okay. Fair enough.
So with that, other than the 50,000 foot view I just gave, Jake, is there an introduction you'd like to make as to the tree farm, or do you want to jump into some questions?
Just to lend a little bit more to that, yeah, we're a private management group, the tree farm management group. So we oversee the operation of the facility. We handle the bookings, the maintenance, everything around the day-to-day for that actual land parcel there. And we have 13 fields that we use to service mostly soccer. We see rugby, we see ultimate frisbee. We can have just anybody from the general public place a booking for a birthday party to rent a field space. But we're primarily targeted towards athletics. And this has been an operation long before I joined the board about 7 years ago. Started with a lot of local organizations to really target that ability to have the athletics for those groups, such as Nordic, your own recreation facilities, Vassal, etc. So this is a little bit about our audience and what we do. Any questions on that topic?
Not for me. And one thing, if I may, just for the trustees, I want to make sure that we have had a couple of conversations in executive session about some things with the tree farm pertaining to real estate, and with that, those are executive session conversations that we should not be having here. So anything along those lines, please, I ask we not talk about at this point in time. We can always schedule another time for that, but this is not the current venue.
Good call out.
Just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Sure. Evan.
Yeah, Evan, were you going to chime in?
Sure, Mr. President, we had invited Mr. Henneke here because there's a couple of items of interest. We have gotten some complaints, both from Jake and from neighbors on different topics. One of the topics is dogs on the property and new signage about that. Some issues about scheduled use of the fields. Well, let's just say it. People have decided to use the fields without making reservations. And then there are some questions as to where people are allowed on the property and use of the paths, etc. So thought maybe Jake would be so kind as to kind of run through a little bit about how the fields operate, some of the issues that they're having with dogs and sticks and field maintenance. Maybe tackle that one first, if you could, Jake.
Sure. And I think it's important to also understand that none of this is funded from taxpayer dollars. Everything that goes into financially running this organization or this facility comes from the patrons, from those that pay to play and use it. And so we have seen an idea from some people that this is a general park and that they can let their dogs run wild across the facility, which has resulted in issues. We have had safety issues occur. We've actually had patrons be bitten by dogs. I've received emails from parents because their child was approached by a dog and just screamed at, when the dogs are aggressive and in their face. And it's been an unsafe situation just on that front alone, not to mention sticks that are on the facility. So imagine playing rugby or sports where you're sliding into a jagged stick that's buried in the field. Dog feces on the field. Owners that do pick it up, leaving their bags on the fields. So it incurs costs. So we are paying our maintenance crew more to have to get out and clean all that up. The sticks alone can damage the equipment that they've used. So we've had a lot of challenges with that, which is why we reached out, about a year and a half ago now, and asked about imposing a policy of no dogs on the facility for those reasons, especially the safety of people using it. And so we had started with that and put some signage up, and that was met with significant resistance. I had to go back and replace signs because people were tearing them down. When approaching people walking through the facility with their dogs or out playing in the fields with their dogs, saying, hey, we have a no dog policy. I'd like to ask you to respect that. We have been met with, the town says it's okay. This is a public park. And basically any reason that they want to come up with to be on that facility for whatever use that they see fit with their dog. I've literally pulled a sprinkler off a field, had somebody come in, set up their lawn chair, and let their dog run around in the sprinkler. So there are there are some perception issues, I think, and understanding. So that's certainly one thing that I wanted to start the conversation around of, do we have a shared understanding of that policy, and are we able to collectively communicate the same message? And I'll pause there.
So with a policy, I know I was curious, when I first heard about it, frankly, I wasn't too thrilled about not allowing dogs on the parcel. At the same time, when I look at the village ordinance as it relates to parks, the village ordinance says a dog should not be allowed in parks. We don't allow dogs at Maple Street Park. They're not supposed to be at Cascade Park. They are only supposed to be at the dog park. So I admit to a little bit of that lack of understanding on my own part. And also, though, seeing as this is a jointly owned venture, so for the village side, in a park, it is okay, it is not okay to have a dog. On the town side, I don't believe there is an ordinance or there is a policy that says you can't have a dog in a park. They just have to be leashed, is my understanding. That also then gets us into what is a park. Not necessarily that I want to get into the debate about whether this is a park or not. That's one of those clarifications that I think we may need. So in terms of a policy, though, I'll also say I don't know if this has been brought up to the board. It's the first time that I think we're having this conversation about a policy as it relates to dogs at Tree Farm, unless I'm forgetting a meeting. But I think that this is definitely something that is one of those topics we should have with the select board, and a topic of conversation that's I want to make sure we're on the same page with.
Yeah, and I think that can go a step further, right? Because we have lease agreements and other things in place that enable us to protect our users of facilities on the premises. And so I think we should come to alignment as to the vocabulary that's used and what that actually means. Can we truly have a policy independent of the town and village that is for the best interest of those using the facility? So I think I'm happy to table that, and we can come back around to that in a separate conversation.
Well, those were just my initial thoughts. Evan, I see that your hand is up. Are you?
Oh, that was
before. Other trustees.
I'll see what everyone else has to say. Anyone else want to talk right now? I'll go. I think the thing is that in my mind, we've never, as you said, Andrew, we've never sat down, we've never had an opportunity as the trustees and or with the select board to just sort of sit down and globally think about what are we doing with the facility and what is our policy. I think the way this whole situation evolved, if I'm not mistaken, and Evan can correct me, it was sort of given by the state to the village and the town jointly, with the understanding that the Tree Farm board would run the facility. And then, as I understand it, and I could be wrong, around 2011 or something like that, then we actually purchased it, or it came under a different, it had some different level, some other event took place. I'm not really clear. So it's never really come to us that this is something that's necessarily under our control, and yet it's also very clear that this is a village and town facility. So I don't really know where to start with all this. What I would say, just in a couple of things, I mean, we've never seen like a budget for the Tree Farm Management Group. I don't know what their policies are. I don't know what their policy is on signage. I know that there was some agreement with the people over at Autumn Pond that they could walk onto the property, but it's always sort of existed outside the orbit of normal village business, and yet it's also, owned by the village. So it's kind of an odd, I don't really know quite what to say at this point. I think it'd be worthy of some more global discussion about this all. That's my off the top of my head kind of comment.
Thank you, George. Raj?
Hi, Jake. Nice to meet you. Yeah, I've never, I've only been on the board a year and a half, but I don't remember this coming up before. I remember the dog issue being kind of a surprise, and having it come to us with some very frightened, frustrated, and angry residents and how they were treated, or how they related how they were treated. And that was, August and throughout the summer, and maybe even back to the spring. I was having a hard time finding the emails. I think, I appreciate what George is saying, and I would, before we get too far down the line of figuring out, where we're at with alignment of policies and talking about policy, I think I need to get my head around where our board and the select board and the management group kind of feel the Tree Farm is and where it's going. So I also a little confused as to the village's role and the history. Didn't have a lot of prep for this, so totally hear what you're saying about the issues around the safety concerns for the players and the guests at the facility. So I don't know. The confusion of whether the perception is it's a park, it's a massive open space. Certainly, it would seem that people could walk down portions of it. The emails we've received seem to indicate people on the paved path have been approached as well about not getting into the park, and it's all kind of confusing. And frankly, I don't know what we do with the he said, she said. So I kind of feel as a board member, I don't know enough about the history and the current situation and that's kind of, sorry, I just don't, I don't have any background in front of me. And I have more questions than, I just don't. But I do, Jake, I do hear what you're saying about the safety issues though, and they sound serious and relevant, and I appreciate you coming. I just don't know where we're supposed to go with it right now.
And that's fair. I think there's a lot to discuss beyond this conversation tonight.
I think so, and I think one of the things you may hear as well is just that general lack of understanding from just the structural side of things as to the board itself, the financials. I have some of those specific questions, but I think we'll get to that in a little bit later. Amber, is up?
I think George had his hand up first.
Oh, I didn't. I don't want to. I'm just going to sort of reiterate what. Let me just quickly say. It would be helpful at some point, Evan, if you could. I don't. You might not even know if you could sort of get over the history. I know that there was some event that happened in, and I don't know if it was 2011, but there was some change of ownership that might be helpful for us to know about. And I also want to say, I mean, I think it's. I want to say, I think it's important that we don't want to just completely open it up to the public, because I think it would be very quickly trashed. I think if it's going to be preserved for soccer, you have and rugby, you need to find a way to protect at least part of it. So I don't want to in any way imply that I think we should just throw the whole thing open to the public and let anyone do what they want. But I'll yield to Amber. Go ahead, Amber. Sorry. And happy birthday, by the way.
Thanks, George. Actually, Evan, did you want to answer that question about the history before I go?
I'm having a little trouble with my computer at the moment, but I can hear you guys. So, and Jake, you can correct me. I believe the village has had a management relationship with the Tree Farm Group dating back to somewhere close to 2002. This parcel was owned by the state. The state would not sell it to any entity other than a municipality. So the village and because the property straddles the village and the town, both the village and the town bought it. And they entered into a management agreement, which was subsequently renewed, I believe, in 2011, which is good for 10 years. Okay. Inside that agreement, there is something called a maintenance plan. And so I guess the Tree Farm Group has been maintaining and managing this property for a long time. I think it's probably always had problems with dogs, but ever since Autumn Pond was built right next door with all their units, and they do allow dogs in their units, I think the Tree Farm Group has seen more conflict in that interaction. Dogs are not the only issue, but they are a constant issue that Jake has brought up. And over the years, their group, who they also have, members on their board that include the 2 recreation departments. And they have come to us and said, hey, can we put up a sign telling people dogs are not allowed on their field? Now, in the village, we don't allow dogs in our parks. So it seemed like an obvious not to allow dogs on fields. That's pretty much the history of that group. Jake can say who's in, who uses a lot of the fields, but it is mainly any athletic group that, including our own recreation departments and our school district rent fields from this group from time to time. And Jake, maybe you could talk a little bit about your maintenance plan and what it calls for, and how things have changed maybe over the last couple of years once that path went in that connects somewhat to Autumn Pond, and then issues with the neighbors, basically.
Sure. So that kind of ties back to a previous topic of unauthorized use. So at one point, and sorry, I know Robin has his hand up. I think he can comment on Autumn Pond as well, but there was an agreement to put in a pathway that would keep the folks from Autumn Pond from having to go through the road to connect with the walking path. And so we agreed to have a path put between through the property from Autumn Pond along the cemetery connecting to the old Colchester Road walking path. Seemed like a good thing to do for the public. The concerns that we had at the time have come to light, which are people going through there, leaving trash. We found our trash cans were constantly full. We found dog remnants all over those fields. They were not always using the path. They would pour in from the forest, from other apartment areas in the complex. So creating new pathways through the woods and just using the facility for what they would like to do. We've had random volleyball games occur on the premise. We had to have that group removed. And so, yeah, there's just been some undesired side effects of those neighbors. And I have worked with Ann and I forget the other gentleman's name there to try and work through that some more. And we have seen an improvement. We have seen some decreased traffic. But there seems to be select individuals who disregard that and still come on and do what they want to do on the facility. And so that does add costs. Nobody wants to pick up poop. Nobody wants to flip a 200-pound barrel full of that either. So we've had challenges from just trying to get somebody to take care of that. And those kind of things really added up in addition to the issues with the security of the individuals trying to use the premise and recreate to coming to a no dog policy. Did that address the question?
I think so from my perspective. Amber, I see that your hand is now up.
Yeah, so I guess I just wanted to follow up on George's comments and Raj's and say, from my perspective, I'm in the same kind of boat. I've only been on here for a year and a half. I honestly wasn't until recently that I even knew Tree Farm existed, and now I run through there all the time. But I would like to see the agreement, and I'd also like to see a copy of the policy. So I think it makes it very difficult for us to have a educated conversation without either one of those things. And again, we can continue to talk about this, but I think it really makes sense to get those items, rewarn it for a joint meeting with the select board, and then have a broader conversation.
Go ahead, Raj.
Robin was ahead of me. I don't mind. He's going to add something. If you're okay with that, Andrew.
My apologies, I missed it then. Yeah, Robin.
Right, this might be rambling a little bit, but I'll start with a bit of history and then come up to date. I do want to say that I completely agree with Jake. I was appalled by the amount of dog feces and sticks and so on the fields when I walked it last spring. This all started, to my memory, 1999. Trevor Squirrel, who was then an employee of Nordic, approached Governor Dean, who happened to have twin girls playing on the Nordic teams, and asked him if the facility could be turned into a sports facility. So that's how the whole thing started. Now, in terms of what's happening now, the Autumn Pond people, they actually put in their own dog park. Now, Not used very much, I understand, by residents there. They have put bags, not used very much by residents there. One person can spoil it for everybody else. And I'm sure there's more than one person, but that's the way it's going. When Jake first approached me about, no dogs on the facility, and I'd seen what happened, it seemed like the only option at the time. Now, in an ideal world, maybe you could say if you have your dog on a leash and you just stay on the path and pick up after you, that'd be okay. When the Autumn Pond people put in the path as part of their development, as part of the agreement, they also paid to complete the full loop of the tree farm. That was something the Essex High School cross-country people wanted. So there was a win-win there in some ways. Also, the path that was put in went down to Colchester Road, where the town was putting in a crosswalk to connect another path, where they got funding from the CCRPC. So it was all about walkability and connectivity. It's very difficult to manage it when someone's there who doesn't care. What do? You can't police it 24/7. They've even had people drive in cars and do, donuts in the middle of the fields, and they've had to be fixed. I don't really have a problem with kids coming in and kicking a ball around on a field that isn't booked at the time it's not booked, as long as they don't damage it. I think that's a reasonable thing to do, as long as, they're having fun and not damaging anything. Amber, running around the path on the outside, I think that's reasonable too. But even if dogs are banned, if people let their dog roam, or if they're there when there's no activities or after dark, you're still going to get something. But I think it's got to the point where the only answer might be to ban dogs until people become more responsible and respectful of the facility. It's sad, but it seems to be that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Raj, go ahead.
No, it's just a couple of things. I just want to be careful about how we refer to a whole neighborhood of people. I'm getting a little nervous about hearing. I don't think it's intentional, but the overall feeling coming across is that a lot of negativity going towards folks that live in the Autumn Pond area, and I want everybody to kind of take a break and think about how they're referring to them. Sorry if that sounds condescending, but it's getting a little weird. The village is growing. Infill is happening. A lot's changed since 2002, 2011. If this agreement is up in a year and needs to be renewed, there may be some things we need to look at, like parceling off portions to increase park space for areas of the village that are growing. And certainly that is one of them. So we also may want to look at other things, like this is very soccer and centric. Needs in the community have changed considerably. Other sports, other needs, and when people are doing this kind of guerrilla use, for lack of a better term, that usually is indicating there's a need. So we've got a dog park that's not accessible in a quick way from that part of town. It's also tiny and kind of a mess. It really only serves a small area of the village. We may need to start thinking about how we position those and how some of this land is used. If people are getting in there with volleyball and people are getting in there doing other things, that's just an indication that maybe we need we need to focus other ways for some of that too. I'm not saying that. I agree. The dogs are a problem. They're a problem. Your management company shouldn't have to be dealing with the cleanup of, as you're describing. There's no question there, Jake, about what you're saying. I'm not trying to imply that. I just, I think long term, I think it, if that kind of use is happening, then to me, that just says there's a need. And incidentally, I'm dealing with that in my own neighborhood right now. Like an area around us is getting much more popular, and we're dealing with it. And we're just going to have to accommodate, I think, to that use. It's just the way it's going to have to be. Where the neighborhood's going to have to just deal with it. Or something. But so I get where you're coming from, but I think long term we probably need to think about how to refocus some of the area over there to accommodate. Certainly not all of it.
So it seems like, Jake, I think you wanted to come away from this conversation with an agreement, or at least a policy agreement around dogs, and possibly around some of the use and signage type of thing. I'm not sure we're really going to be able to give you what you were looking for, and I'm sorry about that. I think that deals a lot with the fact that we are one half, and we can't make that decision unilaterally. So if you don't mind, I think what this is definitely leading to is that we do need to have another conversation for a longer period of time, and I think it's something that we need to have with the select board. At the same time, I think we could use some background information as a board. Again, only speaking for one half of the ownership. If you don't mind, some things that I'd love to be able to see. I'd love to be able to look at the board makeup. I'd love to be able to look at the financial status of Tree Farm, both from a how you guys doing from during COVID, but then in a normal year, how are the financials going? I'd love to know how can members of the public take a look at or find some of this information. I know that you have a website, and it looks like the way to book the fields is to submit a request through the website.
Mhm.
So that part's taken care of. But in particular with the board, I'd also love to know who's on the board, how many members are currently on the board, how's the board doing, how often do you meet, those kinds of things. And that conversation may be good to also have our Tree Farm rep on. Not saying, Jake, you can't speak to that, but also just to make sure that we close the loop. And I'm not sure if Harlan is here or not. I just wanted to say that I think that's some of the information we should have for the subsequent meeting.
Thank you, Andrew. And my goal tonight was actually to ask for some more conversations, to figure out how we can collectively come together and be aligned. I didn't want to put anybody on the spot for decisions. I understand the multiple parties involved here. So I appreciate your time and for having me come out to speak a little bit. And if nothing else, kind of raise some awareness so that we can continue the conversation at a later date. And I have seen another hand raised. I don't know if we needed to address that one.
Okay. Thank you for acknowledging that, because I haven't seen it. Yes, hang on a moment. I do agree that one of the things we do need to do is to start this conversation and to have this be a regular conversation. In my 8 years on the board, I think this is the first time that the Tree Farm and the trustees have had a conversation at this level. Something that's getting into the deeper portion of the relationship, which the Tree Farm is certainly a hidden gem, and I'd love for it to frankly not be the hidden gem. It was mentioned before that one of our trustees just discovered it. So how can we make sure that the property is as well utilized as it can possibly be, both now but also for the future? Because we also don't want to do something where all of a sudden the fields are all torn up, the grass is all burnt, and it's filled with dog spots all over. So before I turn it over for public comments, are there any other trustees who wish to speak? All right, so for public comment, and Irene, I see your hand is up. Sorry, I have missed that up until now. So you would be more than welcome to start this off. And if there are other members of the public who wish to speak, just go ahead and raise your hand or type in the comment box.
Thank you, Andrew. Hi, Jake. My name is Irene Renner. I served on the select board here for 12 years. Among them was the year I was chair, and it was 2009 through 2010. The public weighed in through a special meeting and vote to take over the Tree Farm from the state. And I believe half the acres went to the village and half to the town outside the village. And that history is recorded. There are minutes. Unfortunately, the new town website, I don't know about the village website, but the new town website unfortunately only shows minutes back to 2016. So if I could put in a plug right now, please upload the rest of the minutes so the public, as well as public servants, can look back at those minutes and remind ourselves what happened. Also, I heard Trevor Squirrel's name mentioned. Eric Sen, who still lives in Essex, was also, I believe, integral in bringing the Tree Farm to fruition way back when. So thanks so much.
George, I see your hand is up.
I couldn't help, but I do have to. I don't always agree with Irene. We've been in disagreement sometimes, but I say right on, right, Irene. I think I tried to find something on the town website, and I couldn't find it. The minutes just don't, the records only go back a few years. And I second wholeheartedly that that be corrected somehow. I don't know, maybe they can't do it with their software. Sorry.
Thanks, George.
Thank you, George. Just as that reminder, the only thing I wanted to correct is that the property is owned jointly by the town and the village. So as village residents are also town residents, it's not that the town outside the village owns half, the village owns half. It's the town owns half and the village owns half. And Brad, I see your hand is up.
Hey, Andrew, thanks so much. I just had a couple of quick comments. And a couple are relevant to what you opened with, Andrew. One is that the village or park ordinances are grossly overdue for rewriting, and we have rewritten those, and we're working with management right now to try and get those before you and the select board. We worked with both rec departments and the police department to get some ordinances that would apply to both the village and the town. And so our hope is that at a joint meeting, we haven't really put a timetable on this, that sometime it will get to you all. And to your point, Andrew, the new ordinances that have been drafted that you all would need to consider and adopt would allow dogs in all public parks on leash, with the exception or powers by the rec directors to identify with signage areas that they're not permitted. So for example, they might not be permitted, well, we would not permit them on ball fields, on playgrounds. If you think about Maple Street Park, we would kind of have signage that the dogs would not be allowed around the middle of the park where all the playground area is, and then on ball fields. But otherwise, if you're on paths and that kind of stuff, and dogs are on leash, that would be acceptable. That's at least the proposal, and that you all will get to consider. The other thing that you brought up, Andrew, is in the new ordinances that have been drafted, the tree farm was included as listed as a public park. And so, yes. And so you all, would consider whether or not the new ordinances apply to that property or not. And that may be a strategy for you all to have influence on how that property is managed if it's considered a public park. And then the only other piece is, I've been CC'd or included on some of the conversations about the dogs in the park. And I just think it's worthy, and Robin maybe can speak better to this, of noting that when the new Autumn Pond development was constructed, there was an agreement with the builder that the pathway back to the public streets would be through the tree farm, and instead of developing a sidewalk along that road to get to Autumn Pond. And so this may be a conversation for legal or management, but that is the designed way for those who live in Autumn Pond to get to the public streets through that path. And so I think it would just be an important consideration for you all as a board to know that there is no other safe way to exit as a pedestrian from that development to the public streets. There are no lights on those streets. There's no sidewalk. Amber, you said you run there. I run there frequently as well. And if you ever run through the Autumn Pond neighborhood, it's very nice. But if you take the street to get there, there's no sidewalk or any path or any lighting. That's it. So happy to answer any questions, but just wanted to clear up a few of those things. Thanks.
Thank you, Brad, and certainly look forward to those conversations with relation to the policy. Appreciate that. Amber, is that a direct question going back to what Brad was saying?
No, I was just going to agree with what Brad was saying. I was, at the time Autumn Pond was constructed or approved, I was on the planning commission, and I specifically remember, I think Robin spoke to it early, there was a lot of conversation about that path. and the safety issues associated with getting from Autumn Pond to Colchester, Old Colchester Road. So I agree. I mean, there's a lot of conversation to happen about that path in general, but it was an important piece of that development and connectivity as we try within the LDC to connect all of these things and make it a walkable village.
Hey, can I ask just a quick question? Sorry to just jump in. Is that how remote and isolated is that path between Autumn Pond and Old Colchester Road? Do you know what I'm getting at? In other words, as opposed to running down the access road into Autumn Pond, their road, and down Old Colchester Road, which is rather public, I imagine that the path that goes from Old Colchester Road up through can be rather.
It's rather secluded.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay.
There are bushes, hedges, and things alongside it, and there's no lighting.
So it's kind of between the trees, the tree row and the cemetery, right? If I remember right.
It goes right along the edge of some trees, across the cemetery, back down. Yeah.
All right, cool, thanks.
And then I believe you have to cross through some woods to get into Autumn Pond, also through an unlighted area.
And Autumn Pond wasn't allowed to have the exit road as they probably should have out the other side of the neighborhood, right? That's now gated as an exit, so they couldn't get to Main Street.
It's an emergency access only, yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of a special decision though, right?
Yes.
If I remember right? Yeah.
Yes.
So Jake, sorry, Mr. Chair, not to belabor it, we will take some of this stuff. We will send out the agreements. I will send you a list of some things maybe that you could provide for a joint meeting with the village and the select board in probably a month or so. Our next meeting is, Greg would have to say it's probably October, but we will probably have it October or November based upon what we have going on. That meets with everybody. Great.
Thank you, Evan.
I finally got my computer to reboot, so I'm back.
Nice to have you. So yeah, Jake, is there anything else you wanted to make sure we get before you head out?
I think that's enough for tonight. I appreciate the conversation and the points that were raised, and there's certainly a lot that we look forward to discussing.
Likewise, look forward to it, Jake, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, so that will move us on to business item 5B, discussion and possible approval of design of park at 1 Main Street for the grant application. Robin, did you want to take this, or Evan, were you going to introduce this?
I think, well, Robin, you choose. You want me to do it or you?
Well, we'll do it together.
Okay, you
start.
go.
You want me to start? I would say it's not a grant application. We've already received the grant, but to keep it moving forward and to work with our partner, it's the CCRPC, they get so much money, X amount of money every year from the federal government to give out for remediation. We are part of this year's program. They were supposed to have allocated the money by mid-September. We didn't have our act together in time to get it to them by mid-September. They gave us an extension until September 25th. The reason why they want us to move forward is, and this is just a ballpark figure, say they get $100,000 a year from the feds for remediation of polluted sites. If they don't spend $100,000 this year, say they spend $80,000, the feds are likely to come back to them next year and say, well, you don't need 100, you only need 80. And it takes them quite a while to work back up to that 100 again. The plan in front of you is very flexible. The idea of the plan is that the CAP, the corrective action plan, is informed by this plan. So, for example, if there's 5 trees, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, there's 7 trees on the plan. If there's 7 trees on the plan, then the environmental engineer will say that's a 4 foot by 4 foot tree well. So it's 16 cubic feet. So we can calculate how much of the polluted soil will be lifted out of that space and so on and so forth. That's what informs the corrective action plan. When that's completed, it goes to the Department of Environmental Conservation, that's the state, and it goes to CCRPC. And if it's approved, then they will allocate funds for the remediation. I've been going back and forth with Nick from the tree advisory committee the last few days, and Nick said, well, maybe you don't like elms. The species can be changed. It's just to go in to show how much dirt's lifting out. I think in the memo you've got in front of you, I said, or if I didn't, I'm going to now, that although this is a very modern design, there's a lot of elements that are a homage to Essex Junction over the years, the brick wall for the Drury Brick Company. The elms, because Rick Hamlin told me, you know, as a child walking through the Five Corners to school when it was all stop signs, every street into the village centre was filled with elms, which of course we lost for the Dutch elm disease. And the railway line, it actually didn't show in this. It was done by Miles. The new one that came about 2 hours ago did. I had spoken to New England Central Railroad. And if you think about rail lines, they're flat on the bottom. And they've got the curvature for the train wheels to sit on. I asked them, could they attach the flat side together to make posts? They said yes. During the charrette, there were a lot of discussion of different things. One of Evan's was, how are we going to get the band to be in the shade before the trees, you know, mature? And the thought was we could have something where we could put, you know, a canopy over when the band are there to put them in some shade. So the idea of the posts and cross braces would be we could attach something to that. The other idea with the rail lines is, if you think about it, each corner has this curve that's recessed going down. The idea was we could have LED lights in there to light it up in subtle ways or maybe more bold ways at different times. And we had looked at the gold standard for urban pocket parks. I think we pulled out 3. Peely Park in New York, which is internationally famous. The John F. Collins Pocket Park in Philly, which is internationally famous. And one in Boston, which probably isn't internationally famous because I can't remember the name. But they all had 3 elements in common: trees, pavers, and water. The reason for this is polluted sites, even though you're taking out some of the polluted soil as part of the remediation, to permit the design to go forward, you're not taking it all out. You don't really want grass because people dig in grass. Also, grass is heavy maintenance. Even the larger grass park, City Hall Park in Burlington, I was talking to John Alden today, who may be on soon. They can't keep the grass there. It's bare a lot of the time. I actually went and visited Amsterdam and Copenhagen last year to see what they did with their parks and with their cyclists and so on. And I was amazed at certain of the parks in Amsterdam that were used heavily. They'd taken out the grass and put in false grass because they couldn't keep the grass in place. The nice thing about bluestone or any paver is when you get a small snowstorm, could be early winter, late spring, the paver heats up and melts the snow. There's a lot of elements from the charrette. One that Diane wanted actually was water that dogs could drink from. So we have a mini Peely Park on the back side of the wall for the raised area, where water will cascade down into a small trough. Now that and the hedge in the early stages, the water create a sort of white noise, which will minimize the noise from the traffic, you know, which is worse, you know, peak times, morning and evening. The rest of the time is actually surprisingly quiet there. We should also remember that to the north and east of the park, there could be a 4-story building there, which will enclose it more. Also, maybe not, if Main Street gets closed off, that's going to be a large lawn area, probably. So the park was, the design, which was really included all the elements I could think of from the charrette, was designed to work with the space as it is now and be future proofed, if you like, and work as the center of the village develops again. So we wouldn't be doing it all the time. Another item, I think it was Eden, was she wanted little mini walls along the eastern edge for people to sit on. Now, at the mini wall, you need a 4-foot foundation. Again, you're going into the polluted soil. So instead, we come up with benches that don't have any back on them, so you could sit and look east, or you can sit and look west. So that was the element that she came up with. George and Owiso had talked about the quiet space, and that's what we're trying to, I should call it a quieter space, I guess. And that's what's behind the wall that terminates the raised area. The raised area is over some of the most polluted part of the site, so we don't have to dig that up. So have I said too much? I don't know. But it's a very flexible space. We only showed the fixed benches. Can more benches be put in there? Absolutely. Can planters be put in there? Absolutely, because they're sitting on top of the pavers. That will soften everything. But we thought it'd be nice to have a space that was flexible enough to be filled with people, you know, on the rare occasion, you know, maybe the trustees form a band or something, people want to come and hear them. But it's flexible enough to be filled with people and flexible enough to have pavers and more benches and stuff put in outside of time where there may be an event. That's it until there's some questions.
So if we can just make some clarifications for me, my understanding is that originally the understanding was that this was for a final design. This design can be changed in terms of what we end up doing does not need to look exactly like this. Okay, correct?
Yes, we can put anything we want on top of the pavers. We can change, it doesn't have to be bluestone, it could be flagstone, it could be anything like that. The trees, if we want them in different places, we can have them in different places. But if it's 6 trees, then it's, you know, 16 cubic feet multiplied by 6. That's the amount of dirt that's going to be coming out from the corrective action plan. With the hedges, whatever the cubic area of the hedgerow is, if we want to move the hedge somewhere else, then that can happen.
So it's about how much of the contaminated soil gets disturbed, right?
Really, and you know, like I say, the gold standard is pavers, because it not only does it reduce the amount of stuff being removed, but it caps it. You know, underneath the pavers there will be gravel and so on, but underneath that there has to be this orange fabric the whole way across. So that says no digging any further than this. And you know, like I said, we can, this is the cake, we can put as much, you know, planter icing as we want on it. We can put as many benches that are movable on it. The thing with movable benches is, will somebody move it during the middle of the night? I don't know, but
I got you, Robin. Frankly, that's an amount of detail I don't think we really need to get into about whether benches are movable or not. So I guess so for me, the grant that we already have received is for an insurance program. It's not to pay for the remediation.
It pays for the remediation.
So it does pay for the remediation.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess I'd love to have other trustees' thoughts on this. One of the things I was harping on about this is about getting public input. I'm thrilled that the charrette was done. My concern about the charrette is it was in person during a pandemic when we were supposed to stay 6 feet apart and limit how many people are in one enclosed space at a point in time. When the design came out, I saw it on Facebook. I decided to share it with the village Facebook group. There were between 15 and 20 unique individuals who decided to comment on it, which I think is great. It's a great way to try and get some input. But how to incorporate things like that into this park when we build this park and we design it, I really don't think we're going to go back and redo it. So this really feels like one of those almost once in a lifetime kind of things, unless we really want to spend the money and do it all over again, which I'm assuming we don't necessarily want to do. So that really just remains my concern is I think the design looks nice. I really do, Robin, and you frankly have the technical skill set that I don't have to make sure that something that is designed will be the right types of things. But whether that's what the community wants is still something I don't know that we actually have an answer to. That still remains a concern. What I'm curious on, we approved this design. And then in, say, a year or so, if we do something completely different than what's there, what are the ramifications of that?
Well, we would have to pay for any remediation over and above what the corrective action plan recommended. I will say, Andrew, and email is not the optimal way to go. This was shared with everybody on the planning commission, and all I had was positive responses.
But the planning commission hasn't met since the pandemic started, so they also haven't had a chance to debate or talk or ask questions.
Only by email. I give them answers.
I see there are some other hands up, and I'd love to have some other thoughts on this. George, I think yours was up first, and then Dan, if you want to go after that.
Yeah, right, Andrew, thanks. I was involved with the charrette with other people, and I think the thing that was interesting about it, we all sat down with our little maps and icons and stuff. And when I looked at the end of the process, when I looked at everyone's design, what struck me wasn't how different they were, but how similar they all were. I think I could be wrong, but I believe all of us had something that was kind of along these lines. We all wanted a lot of open space in the middle. We all wanted trees around the periphery of the street. I think we all wanted, like, the idea of some kind of a path behind the park, between the park and the Firebird building. Really, the differences between the designs that we had were kind of the placement of the benches, and should there be planters and things like that, and maybe different space, various spaces between the trees for different views and so forth. But when I looked at them, I also thought, well, I think we had, I don't know how many, what did we had, like 8 or 10 people or something like that. I thought, well, how even just with this small number, how do you take all these, the variations of where people want benches put, and how do you, it's not like a vote. You can, you do compromise. I mean, there's good design and bad design. So I mean, I would say, generally speaking, I thought this final scheme really did hit it on the head in terms of what we all wanted. In terms of tree species, the only thing I would say, I'm not too particular, but I don't want maple trees because they get big and people get very upset when you cut them down, even though they absolutely need to be cut down, like the ones in front of the library. And whatever trees are over along the periphery of the 4 Pearl Street building, the McGillicuddy's building, I don't know if those are honey loc. Maybe it's not. I shouldn't blame the species of the tree. I don't know what went on there, but I think those things look like they're on the verge of death all the time. So whatever happened over there, I'm not sure what it was, but please let's not do that again. I thought, looking around, I thought the trees at Maples at the Veterans Park across the street were nice. They were nice size, they were nice shape, and I think they fit well in that space. So that's the kind of thing I would like to see there. But I thought this design worked well. And the last thing I would say, I'd emphasize, we all wanted to see hardscape in there. No one, in fact, I would oppose it. The only thing I would really oppose if someone said, oh, we should put grass in here instead. It would be horrible. It would be incredibly expensive, and it would just be a big mud pile all year long. So I think the hardscape is absolutely the way to go. Thanks.
Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you. I didn't participate per se in the charrette, but I did attend it. I didn't do the rendering of what I thought it should look like, but I spoke with some of the people there and looked at their renderings. And I do like this proposed park space that we're going to possibly have. One of the things I might say is that as far as deciduous trees, I'm not really keen on that, with leaves falling down or whatever, shedding the leaves. As we commented, or the comment was made earlier, the noise, there's a lot of traffic in the area, and it's really not the most pleasant thing to see a big truck or cars running by as you're sitting there trying to enjoy music or lunch or just read a book or what have you. So I would suggest maybe some kind of non-deciduous type tree, maybe like a cedar or a spruce or a pine, whatever, something. I'm sure there's plenty out there that could be used. maybe as a buffer. It wouldn't lose its effect in the fall or winter, you know. So that's about it. I like the idea of this, and hopefully we can get this moving forward.
Thank you, Dan. So Robin, in the grand scheme of things, I think one of the things that you said is if the plan to actually design the park were to look different, the village would just be on the hook for any kind of additional remediation. That's the only
Yes.
ramification?
Yeah, yes, Andrew. And I will say, Dan, in the quieter space, the hedge there would be arborvitae. It would be an evergreen hedge because it's supposed to, be blocking sound.
So before we turn it over for public comments, Amber, Raj, any other questions, comments? Amber?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, I think I like the design. I wasn't at the charrette, but from what I understand, I think it captures those folks that were there. While it was a small group of folks, I think we as the trustees knew that we were doing this in the middle of a pandemic, and this was the route that we chose to do it. If we wanted to do something else, then we should have gone down a different path. I think, for what we did, we got what we got. In regards to the trees, I don't think there's any problem with Robin, once this plan is in fruition, working with the tree advisory committee to put the right trees in there. I mean, I think we understand the number of trees, and correct me if I'm wrong, Robin, but as long as we've got the number of trees, it doesn't really matter. You don't need to commit to a tree today. So you can work with them at that point.
That's correct. And as I said in an email to Nick today, talking about gold standards, for urban areas, honey locusts are the gold standard. They're a floodplain species. They do well in drought. They do well, not surprisingly, in flood. They're just a really nice tree. And there are a couple actually at Memorial Park. I was just trying to accommodate all the comments that were given at the charrette, after the charrette, in one design. And I think somebody might say I'm wrong, but I think absolutely everything, and I kept all the drawings that the people did at the charrette day. Everything that was in every drawing was put into one design.
Thank you, Robin. Raj, anything before we turn it over for public comment?
Oh no, I think this is great. I mean, I'd love to see ways to get more vegetation in there. I see the trees and everything, and I would just, if there's any way to get more vegetation, that'd be my only comment. But I think it's a good first step, and yeah, I appreciate it, Robin. Thanks.
All right, so I see that, I know Tim Kermer, you requested to speak at the very, very beginning of the meeting on this issue. So you are more than welcome to go first. Tim after that, John Alden, you would be more than welcome to speak after Tim. So Tim, take it away.
Okay, great. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, so I am I'm here as myself, but I'm also here sort of repping for the Tree Advisory Committee, which I am on. And so we just met earlier this week and saw that this was coming up, and it seemed kind of fast to get approval. But I think I have a much better understanding now that the need to do the plan to get the big pieces defined, like how many trees there are, which is tied to the soil remediation, how much soil is going to come out. But the details of the plan could be modified later, I think is helpful to know. So I think just from a tree committee perspective, I know Nick, who's the chair, and Robin even referenced that they've been exchanging by email, so that's great. But just we would like, when there is stuff that comes up especially with trees and street trees, it would be really great to get stuff to run through the tree committee so the whole committee could review it and, give a kind of committee response, and it sounds like we would be able to do that later, even if you guys approve this today, which sounds like the need in terms of a date, we would be able to do that to, advise on the tree types or placement or whatever later. So I think there's still room for that, but just sort of advocating for, kind of routing things through us, that would be helpful in the future. And just I gave some comments on Facebook personally. So speaking now for myself as a resident, I definitely like the trees. I'd like to, as Raj said, more vegetation the better. I'm a big walker. I walk to work at Global every day, or when I go to work now. But I go right through Five Corners every day, twice a day. So I'm there a lot. And it would be really great to have that vegetation. I understand better now after Robin explained the why so much hardscape is there, and I kind of understand that now, I think. And so I didn't love that, but that's okay, especially if we can put planters, if we could put other things, and then I think that would be great, and like the design. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Tim. Robin, was your hand up to respond to Tim?
It was. I'm just thinking, Tim, maybe before it goes to the corrective action plan, we can put in 2 or 3 more trees. We don't have to plant them, but at least we'll know we have that flexibility once it comes back from corrective action plan and you guys are looking at what you'd like to put in. Instead of the, what did I say, 7, you could have 10. And if you decide you only want to put in 8, then we're in the right side of that rather than the wrong side.
Robin, that sounds like a great plan. I actually had that thought. I should have mentioned it. Yeah, just, we could imagine drawing in trees, around the east edge here, or the Firebird edge, just to have them in, because then we calculate the soil removal. If we don't plant them, we don't remove the soil, I think we're okay. But maybe, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a good idea to err on the high side, and then, because that seems to be the main purpose of this plan for that. Yes. So I think that would be great.
Okay, we shall do that.
Super.
Thank you, Tim. And Mr. John Alden, your turn.
Hi, everybody. Well, I'm very encouraged by what I've heard so far tonight, because I think as a plan, it's I like where it's starting, but I think we're getting hung up on the trees, and rightly so, because elm trees, they're gonna be 100 feet tall in 50 years, and that's not going to do what we want in that park. But the idea that we reference a tree type that was, amazing in our village is a nice idea. So maybe we end up with one of them somewhere. But I really agree with what George Tyler said. The last thing you want is a so-called park that looks like a bunch of hardscape with a couple of twigs sticking up with a few leaves on them. You really got to put some green in here. So we want to make sure we get the right trees and enough of them to give us the buffering and the appearance that we want. Otherwise, people will look at this and say, I don't know what they did. There's nothing there. So I'm going to second what Robin and Tim have been talking about, and try and get more trees. Let's calculate on a larger amount of soil being removed and more trees going in, and let's get the right minds together to pick the right trees so that they'll look good in 5 years or 3 years instead of 20. And then I think the public will be much more supportive of the energy that's being spent on this park. As a sort of an urban park. I also agree that you don't want grass. It's very difficult to maintain grass in any kind of small urban setting, and I'm saying urban because it's just surrounded by pavement, and it's going to be pretty tricky to say that it's going to stay green. So I like the paver idea. We have the opportunity to do things on top of the pavers with planters and with other activities that will be much more appropriate for this kind of thing. But if we can't get the perimeter green to show up dense enough, I don't think we want pine trees or too many cedars, because then you end up with security issues. People can't see through it enough to feel safe, and at night people hide behind stuff, and that's not good. So I think Robin's suggestion of the honey locust or some other very typical street tree, urban settings allow to prune them and manage them. I want the village to be aware that there will be maintenance required of these things, and otherwise they're not going to be staying in proper shape or being trimmed properly to grow into a good urban tree. Same with the hedge. So there'll be a little bit of maintenance here, but overall you're on the right track. This is going to be great.
Thank you, John. Robin, is your hand up in response to John? Robin going once? Nope, take that as a no. Annie Cooper, I see your hand is up.
I just want, I was excited to come in and support what George said, and then John was so much more eloquent and articulate and correct that I just came in now to support John. And also, I'm really excited that that this is all kind of going forward, and I trust Nick and Robin and Tim, and it's just really nice. And I just wanted to express my enthusiasm for no reason.
Thank you, Andy. We appreciate the enthusiasm.
All right, great. Okay.
So, Ryan Sheldon?
Yeah, I just wanted to take a second to echo Annie's enthusiasm. I can picture the Essex Half Marathon finishing at this thing, and it'll be great for our community and help simplify Five Corners. And thank Robin for his hard work.
Thank you, Brian. So it appears that there is nobody else from the public who wish to speak to this item. Raj and Dan, I see your hands are up.
Yeah, just real quick. I guess, seeing some of the emails back and forth that Robin was referring to, and I do agree, just anything we can do to soften that area. So, more vegetation, the trees, all this stuff that's just come up in the last 10 minutes is great. But I think the overall theme for me is softening. I mean, you look at the rest of that area, you've got really nice features around Lincoln Hall. I think the area in Firebird's going to be kind of developed in an interesting way to be attractive. The hardscape's a great idea, I think. Anything with planters, just different textures. I totally trust the team that's on this, but I just wanted to make sure that what I was saying earlier was clear. Just any kind of softening material for that area would be much more welcoming for everybody.
Great. Thank you, Raj. So Annie Cooper and John Alden, I see your hands are up. Are those holdovers, or was there something else?
New. I guess I just also piggybacking on Tim's offer for the tree committee to be more involved in whatever remaining phase we have to tweak. The planning commission has been looking at this by email, but if there's a way that the planning commission can get together as a typical normal planning commission body in a regular meeting format of some kind, even if it's Zoom, we're prepared to also lend our support and effort on the final design.
That seems like it could be a great planning activity.
Andrew, do you see Harlan Smith's hand?
I just saw it raised. Harlan Smith.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to reiterate the tree committee being involved, and I'm looking for a little more feedback from Raj. I understand what he's saying, and he's talking about more greenscape, and he may have answered my question already when he was talking about softening it, but I was wondering if he would consider shade structures. Was he going after a straight shade? type scenario, so a combination of trees and shade structures potentially. And then some of the other inputs that obviously we're looking at our local parks, one of the high demands in order to do events in them is how you put electricity through them. So that would be something that I would want everybody to pay attention to, would be how you would put electricity throughout the park to potentially be used further down the road. And then I would like a little feedback from Raj as to, is it softening and could it be done with shade structures, or is it more green that he's looking for? Thank you.
You want me to answer that, Andrew?
I'm fine with it. It was directed towards you if you're good with it.
Yeah, I didn't consider shade structures, Harlan. That's an interesting idea. So thank you for that. I was counting on the trees for that, but shade structures might, or wouldn't, some kind of panels might allow for vertical vegetation that may help to soften it. And I don't want to micromanage that. I was just kind of leaving it up to the pros to sort of, you know, do their work on it. I don't want to get so far down the road that I'm prescribing. But I didn't think of shade structures. It's an interesting idea. You know, just someplace where you're sort of separated from the hardscape around. I mean, you from Memorial Park TD, just right next to it, the pavement at Firebird, right across the street. It's all paved and hard, and I realize why the surface of this park is what it is, and that's not a problem for me. I just, you know, there's probably a lot of really interesting ideas out there on how to create a mood of separation in that area that works. So that's kind of all I had in mind.
And Robin, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, just to put Harlan's mind at rest. We had talked about power, Harlan, in the wall at the the raised area. There will be electrical outlets there, and every actually street light around the outside of the park has an electrical connection. They're not obviously. They might be great for you, Harlan, because I know you'd like to do this, to put lights in the trees at certain times of the year, but probably not something you want to put across the park. But there will be electrical connections in the front side of the wall. It can be used by anybody who are providing some sort of entertainment up there. There's a lot of detail, that'll come through from design development, and I'm sure will add more.
And I mean, that is definitely down the road. You have mentioned that that we can change the park as we go, and that this is not the final design. It's kind of the final layout, maybe similar, but yeah, I know that we are struggling with today's day and age, that people are looking for electricity next to the benches, and that's a small enough park. Don't be so sure that people would want to string lights across the top of it for an event.
Think it'd look good.
Yeah, I love you putting the lights across the stage. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
And George, you gonna wrap it up for us?
Yeah, I don't know if I can wrap it up, but I do kind of want to put a plug in for the folks who showed up at the charrette and put a couple of hours into walking around and thinking about this and collaborating on this. That, I mean, it's great that we've got some flexibility. On the one hand, I'm not opposed to people coming in with other ideas that embellish our concept. That's fine, but I also like to say that we did put some time into this. So the idea that, well, we're just gonna, I mean, where do we go saying, well, we're gonna hold a design charrette, we're gonna have a charrette, we're gonna design the thing, and then we're gonna get the grant, and then we're gonna just completely redesign it. I think that we need to say, this is kind of a basic format here, we're gonna stick with this, and I can see putting some planters and maybe different bench stuff in there, but I think that the original concept that people wanted when we looked at this, as it's great to have trees, but we also want to balance that with the pedestrian space and not just have a space that's completely filled with trees. The idea was to create a place that balances that and invites people who are walking down the sidewalk to come in and hang out there. And I don't know if that'll wrap it up or not, but just needed to put that plug in.
Yes, thank you for that. And I do certainly appreciate everybody who decided to come out. I hope I'm not diminishing the work that was done by the charrette or diminishing the input that was provided by the charrette. That's not at all my intent.
Didn't see it that way.
My concern remains, what was it, 8 or so people to decide in my understanding at the time had been that this was the final design. It took us, I think we're at the 3rd or 4th time talking about this to find out that no, this is just a draft plan where some things can be changed. So knowing that things can be changed from this and that this is really to help pay for the remediation and to help provide a basis for the park, I think this is great and happy to move forward with it.
All right.
Robin, is your hand up as a leftover, or is there anything new you want to add?
No, I'm just an idiot, Andrew. Sorry.
Great. Hang on, comment of hand up one more time with a question mark. Sure. Is that Annie?
It is Annie. I'm sorry. I turned 55 on Monday, and my age is showing because I forgot to say, maybe it's already been planned, that I would like to be able to come with my MacBook and my phone and plug into the electrical outlets that Harlan just mentioned, and then be able to have Wi-Fi. Are all those things going to be possible for me to sit there and do those things? Did you already say that and I missed it?
We haven't. That's a great concept that I think should certainly be explored.
Thank you.
Yeah. I know at one point in time there was a committee to look into having all of the downtown area have wireless internet. It's a great topic. I think it's something that we absolutely need to consider given where we are, and that, internet is essentially a utility at this point, similar to power and heat.
It would be my favorite thing to throw my MacBook under my arm, bring my phone, and have somewhere to do that stuff. So I appreciate all the thoughts that got my brain to my 20-year-old usual self. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. So board, there's a recommendation for a motion, or a recommendation at least. Someone wants to make that motion?
I'll make a motion that the trustees approve the design and direct staff to move the project forward through the CCRPC and DEC so that the CAP can be completed.
Second.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Dan. Sounded like we needed an OPP on that one. Any further debate on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Anybody opposed? All right, passed unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you, Robin. Thank you for those who commented on it and participated in the charrette.
Thank you.
And that will bring us on to our next agenda item about political signs in the village. Evan or Robin, one of you wanted to introduce this?
I can jump in, Evan, if you want.
Go ahead.
So at the last trustee meeting, the trustees heard a request from a resident to waive the political signage requirements and restrictions for a couple weeks leading up to the election. Robin looked into it, and he can jump in whenever he feels like he wants to or needs to. But basically, the Land Development Code is what governs political signage in Essex Junction, and it allows signs to be put up on private property for the 2 weeks leading up to election. On public property, the person holding the sign or putting up the sign needs to be present while the sign is present. Otherwise, it basically just says that signs can't be in the right of way. They can't be blocking views, safety for traffic, stuff like that. Robin and I can both delve into more details if there's questions. But long story short is that staff doesn't think that a sign waiver is necessary, and largely for safety purposes.
Thank you. So my understanding, though, is that the issue was a little different, a little more nuanced than this. I thought that there were some concerns about how signs were taken down And if everyone is okay, the person who had made that request is here. So if the board is okay with it, Brian, if you'd like to make sure that I'm not missing, or the board that we're not missing any of the nuances on that request as we think about this.
Am I on mute?
You're good.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak from my experience as a candidate in the August 11th primaries. There are the laws around where political signs may be placed, and to be clear, I'm talking about on municipal right-of-ways here. And I'm also, to be clear, if they're blocking sidewalks or sight lines, then I agree they should be taken down. But there were signs that were placed within the village of Essex Junction that were taken presumably by Village Public Works inconsistently. So I don't honestly, I don't care what the answer is, and I propose the 2 weeks, which seems to be to mirror the Vermont Transportation Law, which is a combination of 10 VSA 9 or 494 section 9, and another one which basically limits things to 2 weeks and no sign may be up for more than 2 weeks, and political signs need to be taken down in 3 days afterwards. So yeah, but again, my concern was about fairness, and that village right-of-way signs seem to be taken inconsistently, and it would be worthwhile to have some consistent guidance given to the village.
Thank you, Brian. So if I'm understanding it right, there were right-of-ways in which the signs were being placed, and sometimes signs got taken down and sometimes signs didn't.
That was my observation. Yes. For example, there was a sign that was up at the TD Bank on Main Street that was up for 8 or 10 weeks, a Pat Winburn sign. And yet when Tony Vyhovsky or David Zuckerman put up signs like half a block away on what I believe is village property by the train tracks, those were gone within 24 hours. So, yeah.
So one thing I am aware of is that around Five Corners there are a whole host of strange easements. There are a whole host of strange property ownerships, especially around the railroad tracks. Railroad Avenue, Greg, Evan, or George, correct me if I'm wrong, portions of that street are owned by the railroad, portions are owned by the village, portions are owned by Fairpoint, or even a cell phone company may own a portion somewhere along those lines.
Yes.
So it may not always be as clear as to who owns what. So what I understand is the question before us is, within the village right-of-ways, wherever those shall be, is there a desire to essentially waive the ordinance to allow for signs being put in or on village property? And trustees? Raj, have at it.
So does that mean for 2 weeks we're going to have the front of Lincoln Hall plastered with 62 signs? Is that the idea here? I mean, that's village property, right? So yeah.
I'd say we certainly have the ability to allow and limit as much as we want. If we want to allow them in the right-of-ways, excluding any property in which there may be a village building on, we could try and try to find something like that if we'd like. If it's a straight up no, it's a straight up no then. I know personally I'm not a fan of, or would not be in favor of, having political signs in front of the library, in front of EJRP, in front of Lincoln Hall. Personally, if there were signs that were right along that green belt in Route 15, near like past Harley Davidson, past the Susie Wilson, or past West Street Extension, I'm fine by it, as long as they get taken care of, but that's just my opinion. So I hope that answers your question, Raj.
Thanks.
Trustees, any thoughts?
Yep.
Dan?
Yes. Well, I'm opposed to the idea of changing that. People want to put signs up. put it on your personal property or private property. To say that we're going to allow it, but then it's only in certain places, and then we only allow a certain number of them in certain places. It's very ambiguous. It gets very dirty as far as how do you determine how many is too many signs, what size. There's a lot of things that go into it. I think I'm opposed to it.
Thank you, Dan. George?
I'm on the fence. I think when I am aware, looking at it from both sides, that the Essex Reporter, I think what triggered a lot of this is that the print edition of the Essex Reporter ceased to exist. And it's apparently not going to continue. And that has changed the political landscape. And also with the pandemic. So I was kind of leaning in favor of allowing this just for this year to get us, as a temporary measure, to get us A, through the pandemic, and B, until there's more stable platforms around for, political parties and candidates to place their signs there. But on the other hand, going back over this and looking at the ordinances now, it is the safety concerns are a problem. And I would only add that we have to be, we have to be really consistent. If Village Public Works is out there taking out people's signs, then we can't remotely look like we're being selective about it. If we're taking out one person's sign, we have to take out everybody's sign. I know that I'm not saying that Public Works had a political agenda, but I'm just saying they probably, because they're busy in removing signs, they just don't get to them. And I also agree that there are some weird spots around the village that they're kind of like little patches of no man's land. No one knows who owns it. There are probably places in the village center I don't think anyone knows. You probably have to take a couple of weeks to figure out who owns this little chunk of land. So I'm kind of on the fence. I'm sympathetic to political candidates, but I'm interested in listening to what the other trustees are saying. So I'm kind of on the fence about it. That's where I am.
All right, thank you, George. Amber, did you want to chime in?
Sure. I guess I'm going to second Dan and say I'm not really in favor of waiving anything or agreeing to allow signs to be in the public right of way. Safety reasons, aesthetic reasons, potential discrimination, all these arguments as to why I just think let's just leave it as is. I am sympathetic to the political environment and COVID at this point, but I also, I don't know. I think we want to encourage folks to be more like listening to debates and stuff. I don't vote based on who has a sign down at Lincoln Hall. So, I get it, but at the same time, I'm going to stay with let's just leave it as is and not allow the waiver.
Thank you, Amber. So we've all gone around once. Why don't we turn this over to the public for right now? And Brian, I see that your hand is up, so if you want to kick that off, feel free.
Yeah, I'm just counting the votes here, and it seems like that my suggestion isn't going to pass, and that's fine. I think that does resolve Dan's concern that regulating speech is kind of a constitutional problem. So it is very tricky, and I'm actually reading a UVM study on how to do that. But I would please beg of you, if they are going to be removed by the village, to do so in a consistent manner. I gave you the one example, but I can give you more. And my campaign was in the TOV, so I have better TOV examples. Like, for example, I can tell you right now that there are on state right-of-way, there is one candidate, not of my party, whose signs have been up in state right-of-ways for weeks, and I'm pretty sure that violates 10 VSA 494. So, granted, that is a state responsibility to enforce, but please, it's not yes, it shouldn't be the village's responsibility, but I would hate for the village to give the appearance of favoring one candidate or party or the other. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Is there anybody else from the public who wishes to speak on this? All right, seeing none, let's bring this back in, see if we can come to a consensus on this. Certainly at a minimum, Evan, Greg, I certainly hope you, or I know you are hearing about ensuring that there is equal treatment, and I trust that will be passed on. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I can chime in. I can tell you after talking with staff and actually having many years in this, and I've talked to Brian, the last thing our staff wants to do is get involved in politics or political signage. I'm going to say it as politely as I can. We hate this time of year because there's no win in it for anybody. I don't even want to be seen pulling somebody's sign, and I had to pull signs from our front lawn at 2 Lincoln. And we then contact the candidate, and by the way, they're still in our office. And I know they're expensive. And so our staff really doesn't like doing this. And then, as Brian just mentioned, you throw in state property, railroad property, what looks like public property, but is private property. The one he mentioned was next to the mailbox that's on Main Street. I walked by that a dozen times, and I still don't know whose property that is, whether that's the banks or the villages. So it's probably still sitting there.
No, I took it.
What's that?
No, I took it.
Oh, okay. Well, good. So when the candidate asks us, I can tell them. So we're in a no-win. We do the best we can. I will tell you, with some of our staffing issues that we've had through COVID, we probably did not do as good a job as we have done in the past. But I will work with staff to make sure we enforce it fairly and equitably.
So wrapping that up, personally, as I said, I'd be fine with it in some very limited instances. I heard a pretty clear no from Amber and Dan. George, I think I heard is a sympathetic, possibly on the fence. Raj, I think he may have been leaning towards no. Do we want to wrap this up, make some kind of a motion and have a formal vote, or do you feel the consensus of the board is leaning towards no?
I'm a no. It's interesting. We didn't want to have political speech last week. We didn't want to promote certain political speech last week. So I'm trying hard to make a distinction with candidate signs versus other types of messages. So I'm a no.
Okay. George, I think your hand is new.
Right. I guess I'll go with no too, since Brian has very elegantly withdrawn the request. There's probably no need to vote on it, and I think Raj has brought up a good point. I mean, later on we're going to be revisiting the issue of painting stuff on streets, and this would get into potentially political issues. So I think we got to be consistent. So and I feel very strongly about that, not doing that. So yeah, I think since Brian has withdrawn the request, but I think he's made us aware of the situation from his perspective. So I'm not in supporting it. I guess I didn't make my decision.
Okay. Amber and Dan, your hands are up. Are those holdovers?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, just a minute. Oh, my hand's down. It's down.
All right, so from the sounds of it, that's clearly 4 no's. Definitely thank you, Brian. And definitely we've heard loud and clear about ensuring equal treatment. I hope that happens. I would also, if you have any questions, or if candidates in general have any questions as to who owns the land, feel free to give the village office a call. If hopefully they would know the answer, so we can try and figure out whether something is village property or not.
Evan has been great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, and it's always good to hear how wonderful our staff are. Thanks for joining us. All right, so no need to have a vote on that. That will bring us on to the charter for merger with the town of Essex. Greg, did you want to? We haven't talked about this in a while. Greg, did you want to bring this up?
What is this topic? Let me see if I can refresh your memories. So the trustees went through at your last meeting, made a few edits to the draft charter for the merger with the town of Essex. You had a few outstanding questions that were sent to the select board. They met on Monday night and they ran through. In response to the trustees' specific questions, section 203 they wanted to keep in the charter, and I'll pull the charter up momentarily and run through. We can run through each of these things, but just wanted to give you the overview. Section 301 was about redistricting. The select board wanted to keep Montpelier's language that Montpelier has about redistricting, and to do so no less than every 10 years. And section 801, I'm forgetting what that refers to, but they wanted to refer to statute. Let me take a look. That was the Board of Civil Authority and the makeup of the Board of Civil Authority. A few other items that the select board made changes to for you to consider. I don't think it's anything too controversial. Sections 109 and 803 refer to the Planning Commission term length. And doing some research, the town charter right now says 4 years, but that's not required. State law says anywhere from, I think it's 1 to 4 years, and the legislative body can determine that term length. So select board is preferring to not specify that in the charter. They wanted to update the language, one of the transitionary language around timing for approving charter, election of officers. Dan Richardson should be getting in touch with that. Section 302, that was to remove the section regulating cannabis and tobacco, which the trustees had planned to do last week. Select board agrees with that. Section 305, which was about reorganization of the select board after elections, just specifying that it occur at the first meeting of the first month following town meeting. Section 307A, the select board wanted to allow board members to be paid as poll workers. That was a section that talked about the board not taking any other, I think, paid positions within the town. So they wanted to make an exception for poll working. Section 402, keep in a moderator. Sections 501A and C was referring to Dan Richardson's recommendation. Let me just find what those sections were. That was about town meeting and elections, and referring to town meeting day as it's defined in statute. For the adoption of ordinances, the select board is okay with referring to state law for adoption of ordinances. They wanted to keep in sections that are currently in the town charter about filing and recording ordinances, and keeping and updating sections about rescinding ordinances and allowing residents to petition for ordinances. Section 702 referred to discrimination. The select board is comfortable referring to state and federal law. Section 702C, specifying that the select board can appoint the town attorney based on the manager's recommendation, and that the manager can hire other attorneys as needed. Section 704, about manager's vacancy, they wanted to keep that in. Section 1101, specifying that tax payment dates are March 15th and September 15th. They wanted to have that in the charter. And Section 1102, to specify that the select board does not, well, they don't need to specify, but basically not giving the select board the authority to waive taxes, leaving that with the Board of Civil Authority. And lastly, just a miscellaneous piece to specify that the manager appoints the treasurer, to make sure that's included in the charter. So I don't think there's anything hugely different from what the trustees had discussed. I believe the only real difference is whether the select board is still going to stick with the 3-and-3 legislative body, whereas the trustees want to stick with the 3-3-1 model. So I can pull up the charter, and if you want to go through point by point, or take a closer look at any of those sections, or just do a general review for your comfort level. But the plan later on tonight is, if the charter gets approved by the trustees, to warn the vote for November, to have village voters vote on whether or not to merge with the town of Essex.
Thank you, Greg. With regards to the decisions that were made by the select board with the charter, did they finish their review of the charter, or are they still going back to other portions?
They seem to finish their review. You know, they didn't take a formal vote to finalize it, but they went through a lot, and I got the sense they're pretty comfortable with where it sits right now. Evan might want to weigh in, and if he has any other insight to it. So there was no formal vote, but they seem pretty comfortable as to where it is at the moment.
I would just add that there's a couple of issues that are out there that they're waiting for Dan's reply, and of course they're waiting on the state government ops to take up 3+3 charter change. But in general, they were amenable. They were appreciative that you guys gave them direction of what mattered to you and what didn't, and they worked right through it.
Great. So theoretically, the only portions that really would change from here are things where our attorney would really need to weigh in on. And are these mostly wordsmith portions? Are these large structural concerns?
They did not seem to be large structural concerns. In fact, I mean, I'll be frank, I think the major issues always were governance, what type of time period, which you guys have both agreed to a 12-year period. There are some, things about ordinances and how ordinances get approved, how much notice, how many public hearings, things of that nature, and then the process of the ordinances of the village and the town that are in conflict. And we're working on those, and those will also get addressed not only before merger, but probably right thereafter through staff bringing them forward. But in general, you guys are very close to being identical in your charters.
Could we just spend a moment on that portion about the transition with ordinance differences? Sure. Are you saying that the goal is to possibly finalize and adopt any changes necessary to make sure that our ordinances are aligned before the town meeting vote?
No, I don't know if we'll be able to do that, but we certainly, like Brad had mentioned earlier, there's a park ordinance that we believe we can bring to both of you that would align park ordinances. I know that Chief Hogue is going to bring several of them. They have been in legal review, so a bunch of police enforcement ordinances he's going to bring. So we think that the gun discharge ordinance of the town is pretty sufficient to be adopted, and so there's only a few other ones right now, but those are the ones we know of. So probably if merger were to pass, it would not be too onerous of the transitional board to dispense with the adjudication of those ordinances. They're not really controversial now. They may have one or two minor quirks that'll need to be gone over per ordinance.
Thank you, Evan. So from here, personally, what I think we should do is if we could go through the sections that the select board did give us some clarity on or some answers to, so that way, just to refresh our memories into how this is solidifying. Personally, I'd also like to take a look at that, the ordinance transition piece, as I know that some of the questions that have been out there are what's going to happen with that. And personally, I want to make sure that I know what the answer is, so that way I can respond to some of the questions I've received. But I saw that there were some trustees who had their hands up and they have magically disappeared. So apparently everybody is okay with that thought.
Well, my question was around ordinances. I did watch the select board conversation around this a bit the other day, and I just trying to get my head around whether their desire was to make sure they were handled before. And Evan, I think, answered my question. So.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And just for everybody, you all know, but people at home, just because the citizens vote for merger doesn't mean you're merged. It has to go to the state, and we expect that to be several months in Montpelier. And then, should they approve it, there is still a transition period. So while I wouldn't say there's an infinite amount of time, there is certainly time to address anything that got overlooked in an ordinance.
Right. Thank you, Evan. And there are those hands.
Yeah.
George, I think yours was first, and then.
Yeah, I just want to clarify one. It's not even. I'm not going to. I'm going to add to confusion, but there was some discussion there, and I just wanted to address it about when does the charter take effect? And Evan is right. As soon as the legislature approves it, the charter theoretically takes effect. But there's no money to run the new government. The money to run the new government doesn't kick in until the following year, until the voters approve for it. So that's why you have this kind of weird transitional year, because the voters will have, if all goes according to plan, village and town voters would have just approved budgets for the current town of Essex and the current village of Essex Junction, and that money gets spent in funds. So that's why yes, it's correct. The charter immediately takes effect, but there really isn't an operational government until there's money for that government. And that was my understanding of why there's a little bit of confusion over this, but this certainly is not a big deal.
And the state is aware that this is not their first merger. It's not their first charter changes. That's why there's a government ops committee as well. They will address it, and it will be an orderly transition if it occurs.
Yeah.
Good points, George. Thank you for that, and Evan as well. Raj?
Yeah, and just on the ordinance thing too, it's true, right? That just because we merge doesn't mean all of a sudden there's an application of a village gun ordinance on an area that didn't have that coverage before, for instance. Those things get worked out. The geographic peculiarities to the ordinances get worked out. It's not the case, right, that anything that wasn't dealt with before all of a sudden just reverts to the more restrictive, an area that wasn't previously covered. So there has been some conversation on social media about, all of a sudden we're going to have, I can't even remember an example, but I just, hunting and firearms comes to mind, but there were others. So I just want to make sure that's clear, and that I'm clear on that it's not a village ordinance won't automatically be applied to the town outside the village if they didn't have it before.
Right, Raj. That's why I'd like for us to revisit that section in addition to the ones that the select board had decided upon. So if we're good with this, Greg, are you able to see both the charter to share with us, but then also those sections, or do you need me to help list off those sections?
I have it in front of me, and I'll, can you see my screen right now that's sharing the draft charter?
Can, yes. So if
Okay.
you don't mind just running us through all that would be great.
Sure. So the first up was section 109. Planning and development. And it would be taking out the duration of the first terms. You could just say the duration of the first term shall be staggered so as to establish ongoing staggered appointment schedules. You can take out the 4-year.
Great. So I guess just to say, as we go through this, trustees, if there's anything you're concerned about, this is the absolute last chance. So if there's something you disagree with that has been decided upon, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Next up, section 114. This is language about when it's approved and transition phase and stuff like that that's happening. So the trustees are comfortable with what it is. The select board wanted to clarify some of that language. That's about the only discrepancy really there with section 114.
Fine with it.
And maybe just for clarification, that is, again, when and if the merger passes and the state approves it, it is actually a new charter and a new community, but the elected officials who were there at the time of that action, they stay on versus having a special election until the following year.
Section 203 is next. And the select board was okay with keeping all of the language there in the charter. The trustees seem to be fine either way, just wanted to defer to the select board.
Yep. That looks good.
Section 301, voting wards. So this would change to once every 10 years. Section 301B.
And there was discussion about that, and because a lot of, the census is done every 10 years, they felt that that was sufficient enough.
And the goal was to use the Montpelier language. So I can just double check that and make sure that Montpelier language is, that this matches what's in Montpelier. Let's see. 302. Powers and duties of the governing body. It was 302 section 6. The select board was agreeable to take out the section regulating cannabis and tobacco.
Mm-hmm.
Section 305, just a minor clarifying point. 305A, the select board wanted to add at the first meeting of the month following the annual town meeting. So just clarifying that.
Okay.
307A, this is that piece about allowing board members to be paid to work as poll workers. It's this sentence right here under 307A. No former select board member shall hold any compensated appointive municipal position or employment except poll worker until 1 year after the expiration of the term for which they were elected.
And they are now, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Let's see, section 402. Moderator, the select board agreed to keep in this section, just keeping the moderator as part of the charter. Uh, 501A and C. This includes Dan's recommended language, specifying that annual meetings shall be held on town meeting day as defined in 1 VSA 371. And in part C, Dan's recommendation was the town clerk and board of civil authority shall conduct elections in accordance with general laws of the state. Here's section 601, which is the adoption of ordinances. The recommendation was that ordinances shall be adopted in accordance with state law pursuant to 24 VSA 1972. The select board, and I'll double check on the statute before we publish this, but the select board was good with that language, which is what the trustees had preferred. And so all these sections that's highlighted would come out. The select board did want to keep this piece about rescission of ordinances and also petition for enactment of ordinances and special meeting. And those numbers, those section numbers would just get updated accordingly.
Okay.
Section 702. Powers of the manager. In 702A, it talks about there's no discrimination in employment. There had been some listed protected classes. Thought the cleaner way, in case state law changes or federal law changes, is to just reference no discrimination in employment in accordance with applicable state and federal laws, including but not limited to Vermont's Law 21 VSA Section 495. Section 702C, the manager shall recommend hiring the town attorney with select board approval and shall hire special attorneys as needed.
Yeah, they wanted the process to be defined. And by the way, so the village, when our former attorney became a judge, we did this same process.
Yep.
Section 704, this is if there's a vacancy in the office of the manager. The trustees were comfortable keeping it, and the select board was as well. Section 801, there was some discussion about what would comprise the Board of Civil Authority, and the select board was comfortable with just referring to the state law, that the Board of Civil Authority is comprised of, oops, here it is. Board of Civil Authority means unless otherwise provided by municipal charter, in the case of a town, the select board and town clerk and the justices residing therein. So the select board was good with that, and I think the trustees were as well. So just make sure to clean that up here. That was 801, sections 1101 and 1102. These were the tax payments and penalties. Select board wanted to specify in the charter that the due dates were March 15th and September 15th. They wanted to set that in the charter versus having the authority to set it outside of the charter. And as for penalties, agreeing with the trustee and staff and recommended language from the village attorney that the select board not have the authority to waive penalties on late payments, so just taking that section out. And lastly, adding in that the manager will appoint the treasurer. That will be listed under the duties of the manager.
Thank you, Greg. Can you go to the transitional part about the ordinances, just so we can see how that's written? You know, now that you've already gotten down to the bottom, if you can just go all the way back up to the top again of this 27-page document.
Yeah, that's what it says. 27.
Going for the longest charter in the state.
It'll get shorter as we take out the track changes and all that stuff. Get it down to at least 24.
Yeah, I will say I've looked through Burlington's in the past, and it's quite lengthy.
I was just gonna say, I think Burlington's still gonna beat us.
Yeah, it puts us to shame. If anybody's looking for some good nighttime reading.
Oh, don't cut your guys' self short. You can get there someday.
Yeah, let's not model after. Let's not model after
Burlington. Ask if
Burlington.
anyone had memorized what section the ordinances were in the transition, but I just found it.
I think it's 110.
110. Can you all see that on your screens?
Yes. So I'll put it upon just that highlighted statement. The interim governing body shall integrate the ordinances of the town of Essex with the ordinance of the former village of Essex Junction. So that interim governing body is going to be the one empowered to make the decisions in reconciling what the ordinances should be for the community. So it is not the least or most restrictive. One community will not all of a sudden have their rules change out from under them through this vote. It will instead be done through the governing body, which will be a duly warned meeting. And given what the ordinance process is within this, at least one meeting for each ordinance. So it will take some time. It will absolutely be an open to the public process, which is great to read, unless I'm misunderstanding anything.
No, and I'll show you 105B. During the transition period, the interim governing body will also, with the assistance of the manager and staff, integrate the ordinances of the former town of Essex with the ordinances of the former village of Essex Junction pursuant to section 110 below, by identifying conflicting ordinances and determining in each case whether the more or less restrictive ordinance will apply or a combination thereof.
Sounds good. So trustees, this now brings us to the portion of, is there anything that you saw that you are not okay with, or are we good?
I'm good.
I'm good.
I'm good.
I am as well. Amber, I'm not sure if I heard you.
Sorry, I gave you the thumbs up. I'm good.
Sorry.
You have to have your camera on for that.
I have it on, Evan.
Can I see the big thumb? Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. So one thing I want to be very, very, very clear on here. I know one thing we have heard a few different times, both at some joint meetings and at some individual meetings, is throughout this process, what is the village going to be giving up? So what does the village lose and or what does the village give up as a part of merger? One of the most significant things we have given up, besides, of course, the sole control over the village, is we've essentially said that outside of the governance structure, so outside of the 3+3+1, the select board gets to decide everything else. So what we just did is we basically said to the select board, here are 22 things, whatever you guys want to do, whatever you as a board want to do, we are okay with. We gave up the decision on deciding the future of voting, deciding the planning commission tenure, deciding about regulating tobacco and cannabis, about having select board members having the ability to be paid poll workers. We gave up a debate around appointing authority for the town's attorney and the treasurer, tax payment due dates, the authority to waive tax penalties, and much, much more. From what I counted, there were 22 items that we said, select board, you as a group, you as a body decide. So if somebody asks, what have you given up, trustees, again, or village, besides the fact of sole control over the village, we're also giving up 22 very important items in the charter. Plus we gave up a few other things that were in this charter. So I would hope it would be very clearly understood. I would hope that in any types of articles, news releases, social media releases from people in attendance here, you understand we have given things up. This has not been a lopsided process. This has been a very fair process, and one in which we have certainly given up our fair share of things. So with that said, I need to know, trustees, is there anything else you'd like to comment on with this item?
Nope.
Being none.
Only that it's been a long road to arrive at this wonderful pot of gold that I hope is going to serve us well, but that remains to be seen. And it would be nice if we could make it like a cone, like eventually work to getting it less like a one-line charter, like that says everybody just get along or something like that, and everything that's implied, everything would flow out of that. That would be, I'd like to go for that kind of a charter, but it depresses me to think we've got one of the longest charters. I thought we were going for brevity here, so I'm a little concerned that we had something so long. Anyway, that's all I have to say. I don't have anything insightful. So I'm glad we've achieved this, and I think we've got a good document, and there it is.
Thank you, George. And I would say it is longer because of the transitional pieces. When those are removed and when there is some cleanup, it will be shorter than the 27 pages.
Okay.
It was also just an off-the-cuff crass comment. It seems like one of the longest in the state. I don't know. But with that, as I look at this agenda item, is there a specific motion? Do we need to, in this one, are we formally approving of the merger charter, or is that in a part of the next one?
I would think you'd want to make the motion to approve this version of the merger charter.
Trustees. Evan.
Yeah, I would concur. It's best to have it on record.
Would one of the trustees like to make a motion to approve this merger charter?
So moved.
Second.
I would assume this is a merger charter for warning vote this November? I don't know if we need that clarity. Just throwing it out there.
Good clarification.
So George, we had that motion on the table. Dan, you seconded. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you all. Trustees, thank you for your days, your hours, your numerous meetings on this. George, I thank you for your writing, your editing. Greg, same to you. The two of you done a fantastic job on shepherding and taking the notes on this. I really appreciate it.
Or nada.
I gotta figure out where we are. On to a warning for the special meeting for November of 2020. So basically, whether we want to warn the special meeting, as well as some public hearings, which we have to do as a part of state statute. The memo is up there for individuals to read, and while that's up there, I have a couple of questions. I hope this doesn't feel like an 11th hour thing. I was under the impression that we already had approved of the wording for the ballot. Is that true? Or is that what this is?
I'm sorry, when you think you already approved the wording for the ballot? Is that what you said, Andrew?
Right, didn't we approve of the wording already for the ballot? So we can't add any more items to the ballot, correct?
I may have missed that meeting.
I'm only asking just, there have been some questions about, we are asking for a merger. Did we want to ask, now I gotta figure out where I had that written down. Do we also want to ask to better understand if somebody says no? Do we want to ask a question such as, instead of merging with the town of Essex, shall the village of Essex Junction trustees explore separating from the village to form an independent city? Do we also want to ask, instead of merging and instead of separating, shall the village of Essex Junction board of trustees explore dissolving the village and relying solely upon the town to provide services for the town and village? Is it too late in the process to add those types of questions? My original understanding was yes, but when I read this memo, it made me think that that might not be the case.
Andrew, couple things. I think we're just confused whether you did or you didn't. So I think it will not hurt if you do it again. Second one, as I understand it, you cannot have competing questions.
Yes, that's right.
So you can't just say, should we merge, and then say, if we don't, should we do those things?
In case of the instance where they both pass and then all of a sudden
Right.
they find themselves as, what did you want?
Right. So I think this is a formality. We want to make sure this is all good.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is what you're approving, because now you've done the charter, and then setting the dates of the public hearings.
I love it. Thank you for that clarity. I appreciate it. But before I keep going, George, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I'm totally agreeing with what Evan just said. Just what he said is exactly right. And this did come up before, and you can't ask multiple competing questions. The question before us is, do you approve the plan of merger or not? It's got to pretty much be a yes, no, up, down, black, white kind of thing. You can't ask a couple of different nuanced questions.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. A few people have reached out asking that question.
Yeah. I know. And that's why I wanted to provide the answer. Now, post-vote, you guys can ask for special elections. You could do certain other things. You could do surveys. Because really, all you're going to get is a yes or no from the voters. You will get no reason as to why they chose which one they did.
Great. The only thing I want to mention about this is on October 27th, I will not be here. That doesn't mean we need to change the date. Just George is going to be your show on the 27th.
Okay, no problem. I hope it's a good reason.
It's my anniversary.
Oh, all right. Very good reason.
Ken said we made a motion on the ballot question on 820.
Thank you. So any other comments, questions, concerns, or does somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion that the trustees warn a special village meeting for November 3rd, 2020, and warn public hearings on October 13th and 27th.
Second.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Amber. Any further discussion on that motion?
George,
yeah.
If you could you say to add, we're going to have the November 3rd for the two items, the approval plan of merger and adopt Australian ballot.
Okay, I accept that friendly amendment to my motion.
Amber, do you accept that friendly amendment?
Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
I do have one thing to discuss. I just quick mention that for those two public hearings, we're on short timeline, but we want to try to get as many people as we can. And we may want to have some kind of a discussion, Andrew and Evan and Greg, about do we want to, could Channel 17 maybe help us get more, figure out some way to have a bigger online meeting? Because, 10 or 15 people, I'm just bringing it up. I think it's something we should think about. I'm not looking for an answer or even an agreement right now, but I think it's something we need to try to work on between now and then.
You're absolutely right. Ballots are going to be mailed out before that first public hearing. So it's quite likely that people are going to be voting before then. What I was thinking is that we would talk about it under the informational materials, but how about after we make this motion, if we just, why don't we just wait until H, and then once we get there, we can.
Sounds good.
Back up. So George has the motion, Amber has the second, and there's further discussion. So Raj, you are more than welcome to keep that hand up and say what you want to say.
Just a quick, I know we're going to get to that in H. I heard you. Anything, so nothing in this saying the 13th and the 27th of October, nothing would prohibit us, as long as it's within the date range, of holding other smaller informational sessions, or what do we have to?
We can do more than what's there. What these are is
great.
These are just the requirements we have to do, and they have to be public hearings. If we want to do other informational sessions, if we each want to pick some times to be available for a few hours, standing out in front of Lincoln Hall, or having open Zoom, Zoom or whatever this is, Microsoft Teams meetings, we can do that.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Thanks.
Yeah. Any more discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? All right. Thank you all. And we are now into sending ballots to the active voters for November 3rd.
I'll make a motion that the trustees approve sending ballots to all active voters for the November 3rd, 2020 election.
Second.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Dan. Any further discussion?
Where's that coming from? Just figure I should ask.
Your pocket?
Yes.
Evan, Greg, Sarah? I don't know where it's coming from.
I'm also checking that that 17,000. I'm thinking, as I see it now, is probably the town-wide number.
The village one was less than that. It was less than 10.
That number is probably high. I believe it would come out of the village administration budget, but Sarah can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it would, and I think it's a little bit it's less than that, Greg, because Susan and I were recently making sure that there was enough postage on the postage machine, and she needed like $7,000 or $8,000, and we made sure there was 10. So yeah, we'll put that to the village administration budget.
Cool, thanks.
Thank you. All right. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Passed unanimously. And on to 5H with informational materials for the November vote. And this is where we added some items which George had sent to us all in email. I had forwarded on to Greg, Evan, Sarah, Tammy, and probably every other staff member that we have. George, I'm not sure, did you want to take this?
I can, but is someone going to put them up, or let's go through. Let's do this. I'll go through the first one, and the first one is the PowerPoint. Well, let me give it just a little background. So, what we have going on is we've got a PowerPoint presentation that has. I reworked one of our old PowerPoints. It's got a nice template, and I spent time drawing this fancy arrow. And this just has the details of the merger, of the actual merger, if we scroll through it. This was in response to some of you, when I just produced the question and answer piece, several people said, well, wait a second, what about just the specific hard information about the merger. And so I'll back up a little bit. What I envisioned for the village website was 3 different sort of sets of information. One would be this PowerPoint that just has the hard details of the merger. The other one is an extensive a question and answer. And then the other one is a sort of a narrative. I think Tammy has gotten all of these, but with the idea that she could just start kind of splicing them into the website, but nothing's going to be published until we agree on everything tonight. And these could actually be amended further next week. But so there's kind of like 3 different pieces. If someone has questions and answers and they go to the website, they can go to that page. If they just want to know what's the merger plan, what are the details, they go to this. And then if they want to get into a kind of more of an open dialogue, they can go to the other narrative that I sent. And then the other piece that I sent you guys tonight is we're having a video, and I can discuss that in a moment, but that video needs a narrative. And I sort of, again, I had sent that out, got some feedback from you, all of you, and sent that on to the person who's doing the video. So, yeah. And so I don't know what you want to talk about, how you want to do this, Andrew. Do you want to go through the PowerPoint and just quickly look at it, make sure everyone's okay with the way it is, and then we can do the questions and answers very quickly. We don't have to read everything, but just want to go through page by page, make sure everyone has seen this, and any big glaring errors, anything anyone wants to add. So maybe that's the way to do it. Just go start digging in, or do you want to do something else, Andrew?
The only thing I was thinking is the PowerPoint. This is essentially the same PowerPoint that we were going to use for the informational sessions. If I remember right, it's essentially the same thing that was used at the middle school.
Pretty different. It's actually got quite a few differences. I actually went through it. It looks the same, but it's not. The template was good, so I stuck with it. But I put a whole bunch of different dialogue in. If you just keep clicking, once you go to number 3, go to the next one there, Greg. And so I said key challenges. So that's okay. They merge it now. Hang on a second. So here it gets into the details. And Sarah and Greg, I would invite you to go through this. I think I put these numbers in and I kind of rounded them off, but they may not be completely accurate. Again, I said 12 years, and here's a merger will equalize taxes, but not all at once. It's going to get phased in over 12 years, and it means you're phasing in about a $350 increase over 12 years, that sort of thing. We can go to the next one. So 2 transitional periods. This is actually substantially different from the first one you guys saw like months ago. In village and town tax rates gradually equalized. Village taxes decrease about 35 per year. Town taxes increase 25. Again, Sarah, Greg, Evan, if those aren't right, let me know. Put in the right amounts. But that's sort of that one there. Next one. And this again just highlights the details of the districts that are going to be in the transitional charter. The village is a debt assessment district. The village is a tax reconciliation district. Again, talking about phasing in the village's taxes into the town budget over 12 years. Go to the next one. Here are the other things, I mentioned a sidewalk district, capital improvement district, downtown improvement district. Those are in the charter we just approved. I didn't get into the details. I didn't get into the numbers because we kind of left that blank, but we're just declaring the districts, and that gives the board the opportunity to actually set the budgets for these things. But this is really the reference to what's in the charter that we just approved. You look at the next one. Here I described the village merger charter proposes 2 voting wards. Ward 1, again, this is just I had to revise this just the latest thing because the select board recommended Ward 1 be the town, Ward 2 be the village, and we approved that. We said no problem with that, and I just described it. So we're going to divide the community up into 2 voting wards. Next one. And then here's obviously the significant difference between I didn't get into discussing what the select board, and then the last one, I looked at some of the other key features from a voter's perspective. How does this impact me, the way I interact with the community? Australian ballot instead of voice vote. Just one annual meeting instead of 2 annual meetings. The name of the new community is Essex. The incorporated village becomes an unincorporated village. And then I just decided the last one needed to stay in there, that just because there are some questions about water and sewer rates and septic and all that. And I just tried to make clear that water and sewer rates, whatever they are, you're paying right now, that's not going to change. They're not part of a municipal taxing structure. It's a different billing unit. So those are the hard details of the merger. What would happen? And I don't know if you want to go back and correct any of this stuff, but the next document where I get into the questions and answers gets more into some of the rationale and the more of the discussion. And again, I had amended that to from on the basis of some of the comments that you guys sent me. And I just wanted to get very direct about it. I received a ballot. What does it mean? What are you talking about? And then you mean there's going to be a new charter. And Andrew, you should look at this, make sure it contains the changes that you just sent me, because I believe it does, but if I didn't, then let me know. Does the town of Essex, does Essex Town need to agree to the merger? Yes. I tried to give a little bit of explanation later on about why they're not doing this just yet. But here's the description. Yes, the town has to do it, and you get to vote on that one too. And then it has to go to the legislature. They have to approve it. So I tried to just give hard dialogue. Okay, then I said, I'm confused. I thought I lived in Essex Town. I go in from Essex Junction because I know there are a lot of people out there that aren't sure of what part of the community they're in. So I said, if you got a ballot from Essex Junction, you live in Essex Junction. And it's because here I get into why didn't I get something from the town? They chose not to send out. Didn't want to get into any political dialogue here. They tentatively plan to send out for town meeting in 2021. Tried to just lightly touch on why the town isn't participating this November. Glad to change this. So I said if their plan of merger is different from the villages, doesn't that kill everything? No, some change. As long as they're not too significant, then things can be reconciled later on in the Government Operations Committee. I tried to address this question. Wouldn't it have been better to wait? And I tried to say what I thought were our reasoning, and the big one was we wanted to take advantage of the November elections. We didn't think the legislature probably isn't going to give the select board the answer they're seeking. We don't know. Maybe they will, but chances are they won't. And that the charter that we're approving and putting before the plan of merger is something that was developed with the select board and with staff and with legal counsel the last 2 years. And we didn't see a lot of value in postponing it and continuing to work on it. It was just about finished. And with other things happening in fall and winter busy season, we wanted to wrap it up. And then I go down to the next page here. If the merger is approved, what will it be called? And I just said it's going to be called Essex Town, Essex Junction, whatever you want to call it. There aren't going to be significant name changes. The charter says Town of Essex, but you can continue to refer to the community any way you want. No influence from us or the select board, any other group. We strongly encourage our citizens to discuss this among themselves, ask questions, find out as much as they can from trusted informational materials offered by the Essex Junction government and Essex Town government. We can go through this. I think we can move on. Okay, and then I tried to. I think it came up. Well, wait a second. Tell us what's bad. What if merger doesn't pass, or what if we don't pass this? And what's the downside of merger? And so I tried to say, okay, we give up local control of our services. Village and town departments serve limited population geographic areas within the community. Consolidating them will eventually make them be much larger community-wide departments with more centralized control. Again, this was maybe a little bit of editorializing, but I didn't want to make it, I didn't want to make it all like, cream and sugar, all wonderful. I tried to say, look for reasons. Well, some of the downsides when you make things bigger, it's not necessarily making them more efficient, because sometimes you eliminate duplication, but sometimes making things bigger has their own administrative costs. Happy to take that out if that doesn't make sense to anybody, but I also didn't want to just sort of sugarcoat the whole thing and say everything's just going to be fabulous. I mean, we're trying to be realistic. If merger happens, what's the immediate effect? Again, tried to say the effects will be felt very gradually. There's no plan to suddenly cut anyone's service. We've tried to structure it that way so that from the user level, everything pretty much stays the same. But that also means that there's not going to be some sudden tax reduction. Don't be expecting that, village residents. You're not going to see that. You might see a small, very small reduction, but you're not going to see a giant reduction. Town residents, you're not going to see a giant increase. You're going to see a very modest increase. So I wanted to make that clear. What happens if merger isn't approved? Again, everything pretty much stays the same. We would probably continue to look for ways, jointly between the two boards for consolidating costs and sharing services for the foreseeable future. And Andrew, I think this is what you added, paying a larger share of the community's expenditures than their town neighbors. And so the village would likely begin research and community conversations about how next to proceed and whether to keep the status quo, separate from the town to create an independent village with no ties to the town, or dissolve the village entirely. And I put this last piece in, which could mean I'm sorry, I did put this in. Should have cleared this with you, Andrew, which could mean significant cuts in local services. I'm happy to take that out, but I don't think we can dissolve the village and say there's no immediate impact. I think there's one of the possibilities of dissolving is that you could see some significant changes in local services if the village just simply dissolved its charter.
Absolutely.
So, but I know that that's been a question out there for a lot of people. Why don't we just dissolve the village? And so you need to address that.
No, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you getting this started. As what you did is you did help to present a nice balanced approach. It isn't one that is advocating one side or the other. It does seem as if this is the information, it's the facts, it shows the good sides, it shows the downsides. It's great.
And so the idea, unless anyone has significant changes, these two pieces would be posted on the village website. And Tammy and Linda is my understanding, have already, and I know I've seen some of their work, and they're at work kind of splicing these in and creating a space on the website for them. The next piece is I connected with a young man, Tyler Struss, last week. He has been making videos for quite some time. I looked at his videos, and he has a partner who has also made videos for commercial and nonprofit and government, and they're very high quality. This was a script that I did. I believe I sent this out to people and looked for any edits or any changes. And then again, I think, Andrew, you had some just got back to me, and so we made some more changes in it just yesterday. The plan for the video is that it would be about 4 minutes long. It would have scenes of Essex Junction with a voiceover reading this script. And it would be posted on YouTube, but the link would be embedded on the village website, and I would envision we'd probably put it right on the front page once it's done. And then we can post a link on Front Porch Forum, Facebook, any other medium you want, and it would take people to the video. And this really needed to be abbreviated. Couldn't get into a lot of details because Tyler said to me about 4 minutes is a max. You might go 5, but you're starting to lose people at 5. 4 minutes is about the right length. And so we tried to kind of whittle this script into what it takes an average person to read in 4 minutes and to listen and last for 4 minutes. I just tried to describe very, very objective details, the merger ballot and the vote. We sent this out and this is what it means. I tried to give a very brief history of merger because I don't know if that's important, and that's probably something that could be taken out, but I know that it's on people's minds. If we scroll down a little bit, Greg, or I'm not sure if it's Sarah or Greg. So it was longer, and then I tried to really scroll it down and say financial strain is usually what's been causing the merger efforts in the past, failed merger attempts. Tried to say the last merger attempt was in 2006. It was approved, but then it was defeated. Scroll down. Last separation attempt was in that could come out if we need space. Again, getting village residents and town residents to agree has always been the challenge. Most of the time they disagreed. However, the cost of operating municipal services would be distributed. But there have also been concerns about identity, with the village wanting to retain its village-like identity, and the town wanting to preserve its character as a more rural and suburban community. Happy to take that out if that's too much editorializing on my part. Boy, I don't know why the 2018 is red there. That I tried to correct that. So I'm trying to talk about the merger plan. Here's the history. We started in 2018. I tried to explain a little bit about the details of the phasing in of the village tax rate, integrating with the town tax rate. A little bit of allusion to the fact that because 12 years, it helps mitigate it, but it also means that as the community grows, that also helps offset the costs. So I just wanted to put that in because I'm trying to envision the video, and he's going to be going over Essex Junction and looking at growth and getting people to think about that as we're growing, that could offset the cost of merger. Last section tried to say there's two voting wards and a single government. Just described that the community will now have 2 different voting wards, 1 village, 1 town, and there'll be a 3-3-1 board structure. Change name isn't really going to be a big change. It's going to be still called Essex Town, but we can still call it Essex Junction, the village, the town, the junction, and so forth. And then I tried to say the town vote will be separate. It's important for village voters. We're just speaking to village voters now, that they are citizens of 2 governments, and so they'll be being sent a ballot probably next year by the town government, because each government has to get its voters' approval to merge. And if both votes are positive, the 2 plans get sent to the Vermont legislature. Any minor difference between the plans can be reconciled, and the merger will take effect later that year. Then the last one is just your community is in your hands. Ask questions. And I tried to pose some of the questions that people might want to ask. You like the idea of separate voting wards? Is tax saving enough? 12-year phase-in plan too long, too short? What else do you want to know before casting your vote? I tried to say we'll be holding online meetings. We may want to actually put in the dates for those meetings. I'm saying they'll be posted in other places, and that's the end of the dialogue.
So George, one thing with the questions, I'm not sure, do we want to be asking residents about some of those details, since we can't change them?
That's true. I don't, yeah, okay, then I agree. Yeah, I see what you're saying. As I was saying it, you'd say, well, what good does it do to ask about a 12-year plan? Because it's too bad, because that's what's in the charter, so you can't do anything about it. So maybe we could just take a whole bunch of, a lot of the actual details out. That would be fine with me. I mean, guys, this is any of you have stuff you want to take in or out, let me know. I mean, and do it right. We can do it right now, or there's still a little bit of time. It probably won't go online for another week. But yeah, definitely you can take that right out right now.
What do you think
probably
about?
Just go, what are the pros and cons, and then just take the rest of that paragraph out.
What do you think about if there are any big philosophical concerns? If there's any big concerns, we say them now. If there are any smaller, whether they be similar to wordsmithing type concerns, if everybody can commit to sending them, George, what do you think about the end of the day tomorrow? And after that, it's too late.
Yes, and I would only, and that's fine, Andrew. And we might even be. I don't want to say we could probably do it over the weekend and do Monday. I don't want to do. I'd like to get it done by tomorrow, because I think Tyler, he's working on the. He's sent a drone up this week to take overhead shots of the village, but I would imagine he's going to need to start splicing in the narrative into the graphic stuff. So any changes are fine. The only thing I would say is we don't want to add like a whole bunch more stuff. I tried to get this as pared down as I could. Anything that you want to take out would be good. Taking stuff out would be good. Putting a lot more in would probably not be too good, or would have to pull something else out, because it really needs to be fairly brief. Mm-hmm. And you can all get back to me with your individual ideas tomorrow, and that's fine.
I see Raj has his hand up.
Yeah, I think the script is fine, George. My question was more on the Q&A, so I can wait if you want to do one at a time. Sorry.
No, I think if no one else has problems with the script, then we can go back to the Q&A, because that was a lot of dialogue there.
I mean, I'm going to read over it one more time in the morning. I just had a couple more thoughts and aren't really fleshed out, but
right.
We'll get back to you by tomorrow afternoon at the latest if I have anything on that. But the Q&A, just the last bit. So I did feel like it needed a little bit of a preamble, much like you get into a little bit of the history and the not so much the merger, but just kind of the Q&A kind of left me wondering if I'm like a lot of people and don't know how the community is made up.
Right.
We get this question all the time, right? Well, my address says Essex Junction.
I know.
It still doesn't. I can try to write 2 or 3 sentences for you, so you're not the one doing my suggestion. I'll try to do that by tomorrow afternoon, just to give you a sense of what I mean.
Yeah,
but I think
that's fine. That's great. That's perfect.
I think we just need to beat people over the head with, like, not literally, but with, this is the overall makeup currently. This is why this is a big deal.
Yeah, and I let me, and as you know, the Q&A is just going to be on the website, so we've got virtually infinite space. So this could be bigger. I mean, you don't want to make it too big so it's unreadable, but you can certainly add stuff. I'm only concerned about adding stuff to the video narrative, because that needs to be brief. But yeah, absolutely, send whatever you want, and we'll put it in.
And it can be, it can be live. I mean, as we get,
absolutely,
can't remember. I don't want to think back to that other process, but we solicited questions and answered them. But the dissolution part and the what happens if merger isn't approved. I mean, I'm hesitant to put in options that may not actually be realistic options, and
yeah,
that one presents some scary scenarios to me. As that word relates to our employees.
Right.
Because by definition, it would mean that we would have layoffs potentially. Yeah. And I just feel like that's probably never going to happen. I mean, but people are talking about it. So how do you address it? Right. So, because that's going around. Oh, it's an option.
Well, the problem, if I don't mind, if I can respond, Raj, is it okay?
Yeah.
Andrew, just respond. I just had a little dialogue. I have a huge problem with it, and this is in my mind, there are like urban legends that live on in the community, and one that got started back in 2007 or something was, oh, the village could just dissolve, and that'll teach everybody. And it's like, no, actually, the village can't just dissolve. The legislature is going to ask you, you're going to dissolve, well, what about your debt? What about your contracts with your employees? You can't just dissolve. You can't just walk away. Sorry, you don't get to do that. So, you'd have to have a plan. But and the plan pretty much would look almost exactly like the plan of merger, which is who's going to agree to take your debts and your assets? What are you going to do with it all? How's it going to get phased in? And so forth. So it is absolutely a kind of an urban legend, and I would like to kill it, frankly, but I don't know how. Yeah, I mean, but there are people out there who are under the impression that this is a viable option. If the village just dissolves, it'll take care of everything. Everything will just continue on as it is. The library will stay open. The parks will keep running. The fire department will keep operating. And it's like, yeah, no, that's not necessarily the case. The town would have to agree to take on those assets and continue running them. There'd be some obligations, but yeah, so I'd like to kill it. But so I'm happy to whatever language, or I'm happy to hear what other trustees have to say about how to handle that particular thing.
So I'm the one who put that in, and I'll take the ownership for that. And when I put it in, it was part of that. Some questions about. So I put it out on Front Porch Forum on Facebook. What are your questions about this? And that was one of a few of the responses were, what are the options? So if there is no merger, what else is there? So I included that as legally, yes, it is an option. Realistically, personally, no, it is a terrible thing. And then so if we want to exclude that, I'm fine with it.
Okay.
I don't also think, if not to jump back in, I hope that's okay. There has to be kind of a way, though, to explain or to address, I think, a lot of residents feel, which is, and I think you did that here, which is, the conversation has to continue because the status quo. So maybe it's just kind of pulling that last little bit out. And I'll think about it tonight and tomorrow too. If I have anything to add, I'll send it to you. I don't know. The dissolution thing is, I mean, even separation has its, it's opinions out there on realisticness, so, I guess that depends on who you ask, right? But
I'm fine leaving it to the two of you personally. Two of you want to wordsmith that, you have at it.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, get me your changes, Raj, and we'll put it in there, and I'll make sure you're cool with everything before it finally gets published. And we're talking about the village website, so we can always just amend it later on if we decide something is really terrible, or we really want to change something.
Sure.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm good.
Okay, hey, Andrew, I wanted to just mention one other thing, and since the other trustees are here. So we also had the idea on the village Facebook page of you did this, and you can describe it a little bit. You asked people, what do you want to know about merger? What are your questions about merger? And I think that's a medium we haven't talked about, that's available to us, and it would be great. But that's kind of like more active. You can't just post stuff on there. I mean, you have to be engaged with it. But on the other hand, I think it's a great place because it's a huge source of information and opinion. So I just want to, but I think it would be a great opportunity for us to have that kind of rolling, ongoing dialogue. But I just wanted to throw that out there. Let me give you your thoughts on it.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, George, that I think Facebook would be a great venue for this. At the same time, I also think Front Porch Forum is another great venue. With the feedback regarding questions about merger, I got more responses and more feedback through Front Forum than I did through Facebook.
Okay.
But regardless, I think either are or both are great ideas. I don't know how the best way would be to facilitate this. I will say that I'm not on every day. I'm not on a lot during the workday. I'm happy to do what I can to be on as much as I can to help answer questions as they arise. I would also wonder, Raj, I think you may be a great person to really help out with this, especially as a part of being in the governance subcommittee. I think that if there are questions, if you and or I would be willing to chime in and help to be the voice from the village, if you will, on these issues, that may be helpful.
Sure.
I don't know if what we want to do, maybe offline, if you and I want to talk about structuring some, daily or every so often, here's what's up with the charter, here's a small snippet of what the part of the charter means, how we want to try and do that. But maybe we can talk about that offline.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Burning ideas.
I think that we can do that. I think there are ways to solicit questions. We're a Microsoft environment. We can use a couple tools they have to put a link out and solicit questions. Put those on Front Porch Forum and Facebook. People can submit them anonymously, and then we can have a place to answer them. We can talk about it. There's ways to do it. I think that'll be fairly easy to manage, or it should be manageable.
I liked your hesitancy there.
Who said easy?
Not this process. So I think that would be great. We'll have that video, and so that could also be another thing that would be great to share and to share frequently. So that sounds good. We're also going to have the village website, as has already been said. So at a previous meeting, we had set a budget for this. My understanding is this videographer person, he has up to, I think, $2,000 or so to spend on this. One of the things we had talked about as well is doing mailing, and from my recollection, it's about $3,500 or so, $3,500 to $4,000 for a mailing to all village residences. I think that that's something we should also do. I'm not sure whether it's that Q&A document, if there's some other brochure, if there's some more beautified synopsis of this that we could send out, but I certainly think that we want to take advantage of that.
Okay. My thought was, and really just me, and I really would urge the other trustees to jump in and think and tell me what you think. And Andrew, because you've done a newsletter already. But again, you need brevity. You can't. It really needs to be like a page and a half. Particularly if you're going to just have just a single sheet that you're going to fold and mail, which I think is what we are looking at. I don't think we should be spending a lot of money I think it's good, but it has to be kind of simple. And I was kind of thinking that some of the information that we put in the narrative for the video might, I think you have to start. What is this? What is the plan of merger? What are you talking about? Where do I live? Do I live in the village or the town? What's it going to mean for me? Tax savings. What does it mean? Why are you doing this? What's the benefit? Just really pretty straightforward questions, and then really heavy emphasis on driving people to the village website so they can get more detailed information. That's just my thought.
Sounds good.
And I could start again. Skip the merger vote. Okay, great. That's great. That's fascinating news. Great. Okay. Great. All right. We've got our work cut out for us here.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So is there anything else that we need to talk about in this item? Again, just to recap, trustees basically have until the end of the day tomorrow to get thoughts back to George. And I assume before they get finalized, printed, mailed, however it is, staff will take a look to make sure just that some of the numbers are accurate, that we're from their perspective that it's neutral.
Right. And I would only add, Andrew, and that's perfectly great, and I totally agree. I just add one thing, is that Evan, Greg, Sarah, you're very welcome to look, and particularly anything like hard numbers, technical details that we're not getting right, or we've omitted something.
Oh, okay. For some reason I don't see it. Irene, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I noticed on page 3 of the Q&A, under do the Essex Junction trustees support merger with Essex Town? The first statement says, we firmly believe village citizens must make this decision without undue influence from us. And so I would respectfully suggest that rather than discuss these documents among yourselves, that you bring in some opponents of merger, some people from outside the village, and truly work to not have undue influence in these materials. For example, the section directly below that phrase says that town residents and businesses outside the village do not share the cost of operating some village services such as the Essex Junction Fire Department, the Essex Junction Rec and Parks Department, the Brownell Library, and Community Development. I would beg to differ. I know the town outside the village residents contribute quite a bit to a fire truck several years ago, and then they contributed even more. I understand that people who use the Essex Junction Rec and Parks Department, if they live outside the village, contribute to the running of that through the fees that they pay. And I also understand that there's been for a very long time a $15,000 contribution from the town budget each year to the Brownell Library. So I think it's critical that if you don't want people criticizing the information materials that you're putting out, that you have people go over them with a fine-tooth comb who may not agree with this plan, but who can point out those things, and they will make all of us look better because there will be more objective truths in these materials. Thanks.
It's always nice to have our neighbors from the town join us at these meetings as guests. It's great.
Yep. Good. That was good. A good suggestion. We need to maybe, I would say, if I could respond, it is a struggle because the finances are so complex that it's any concrete statement you make can be challenged pretty much. And I appreciate what you're saying, Irene. I can try to just, we can just try to keep wordsmithing this a little bit to make it a little more reflective of what's going on. I think we're all aware that the town contributes, money to various departments, but I think you would also agree that with the essence of what I'm trying to say is that where the contribution of the town to the Brownell Library, for example, is not on even within the same scale as the village's contribution to the Essex Free Library. we're not trying to bias the thing, but we're also, we want to provide an accurate picture so people understand what this is about. We'll keep working on it. Thank you.
Well, never mind.
All right, so sorry for missing that hand. Are there any others?
Irene's hand's up again.
I don't know why I'm not seeing the hands coming up. So I guess, public, if you want to speak, if you can type into the chat, that'd be greatly appreciated because I'm not seeing hands at this moment in time. So Irene, was your hand up again, or is that the holdover from before?
It is, as long as no one else wants to speak about this.
I have no idea. So I guess.
Okay. There's a section on page 2, speaking of being completely accurate, and it talks about the select board has asked the legislature to clarify a decision made earlier this year regarding a proposal to change the town charter. That has no basis in truth as far as I'm concerned. I believe that the question above it can be answered. The select board chose not to send out merger ballots for the November elections because the two boards could not agree on a representative model for the merger charter. And then you don't have to write any of the things in the next question and answer, and you can really be clear and transparent with people as to what the sticking point was. Thanks.
Anybody else? All right, let's go to 5I, the mission statement for the Village of Essex Junction.
Andrew, I'm going to pull that up, and as I do, just some quick background for the trustees, anybody still listening. When the trustees looked at the flag and mural policy a couple weeks ago, there was a discussion about whether or not it made sense to take a look at the mission statement for the village and helping to craft that policy, since the policy referenced the village mission statement. Since then, the select board has also taken another look at the flag and mural policy based on some updates, which is next on your agenda, and they do not plan to take it up immediately. They want to get some more input after they go through some listening sessions around racial justice and try to hear from some more people. So I just wanted to put that out there for the trustees in case you were expecting to catch up with the select board or trying to match up the policy with them. There's less of a time constraint at this point. So with that in mind, village statement for Essex Junction, the current mission statement is in the packet on the memo there, so you can review it. Some other resources to consider are the heart and soul values. Those values and their supporting information, or I guess elaborative statements, are also included in the packet. And so really this is just kind of an opportunity for the trustees to discuss if you want to make any changes to the mission statement, and or give some sort of direction to staff if you want us to try to track down any additional information. The mission statements, they're posted in the personnel guidelines. They also go out in the annual report each year. And obviously it serves as the mission statement for the village.
Thank you, Greg. I also appreciate that clarification as to the town's or the select board's desire for the next agenda item. I would also say for tonight, I would like us to not necessarily go through the painstaking process of doing everything necessary to finalize a mission statement. If there are new pieces of information we should consider, that would be good to have. It's 9:46 at night, and I don't think we want to get into another half-hour, 45-minute long debate. With that, Raj, your hand was up first, and then Amber.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very dry and clinical mission statement, and you know, I think we should take the opportunity, not tonight, but to have a thoughtful community discussion, perhaps referencing some of the heart and soul values that were referenced in the memo, and think about not over months and months, but how we want to position the village moving forward. And I just think, as it relates to the request that came in around flags and murals, you know, with all due respect to that request, and I do have a lot of respect for that request, I think we've been put in a position of having to kind of rush through, and so rushing through a mission statement modification to then try to rush into a policy development process. You know, we're in the middle of an equity and justice conversation in the community, trainings for municipal staff and boards. 2 out of 3 of those sessions have gone on. More listening sessions are to happen. I think we should let that play out and inform how this process moves forward, both in the mission statement and in the flag and mural proposal. So I'd say, you know, as far as this is concerned, I'd say we should probably hold off and think about a way to kind of engage with some community members and figure out how we want to approach it and modify it if at all.
Thank you, Raj. Amber.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. I mean, I appreciate the staff bringing this, getting the heart and soul values in front of us and the current mission statement. But when I saw this, I was thinking, there's no way that we're going to get through. It's just going to come up at 10 o'clock at night, and my brain power is already sucked dry. Mission statements in the past that I've done with other, employment situations, they're lengthy processes, and they do require some consideration, I think, of the other folks in the village. So maybe, some public input as to what the public is thinking for a mission statement, kind of like the charrette stuff, to that level. So I think it's more, for me, I was thinking, this is great, but I think I would say I'd make a motion to table this for tonight.
I completely hear you, Amber. Don't disagree with you in any way, shape, or form. And given that we're also about to vote on merger, may almost be a moot point.
Yeah.
So I know I brought this up, and the reason why I had brought it up was more so around how it felt like a list of departments that we will oversee and that we will ensure happen. A couple of feel-good words in there, but that we make sure departments function. The board is okay. Again, if there's new information you'd like to have added to this, if there's a certain process you'd like to recommend, I'm totally fine putting this aside until, I don't know, March, April.
I don't know if we have to wait that long, but
it gets me thinking we've got budget stuff that comes up December, January. So
yeah.
And then again, the hopeful town vote for merger in March. So that's the only reason why I said that.
Yeah.
The consensus I'm getting is that it can wait for a while.
I think January, it's not a busy time at all. So I think we should wait and should do it then. That's great. Just kidding.
I think let's see how the community conversations go.
Yes.
Based on that, based on the report back, hopefully some of us can get to those trainings. This may not be as hard as we think.
Okay. So
I make
table
a
for
motion
now.
to table this.
Okay, so Raj has a motion to table this. Raj, do you want to put a time limit on, or just table for a future meeting?
For a future meeting.
Okay, so we've got a motion. Does anybody want to second it? Okay, Amber. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Lovely. And so going into the draft policy for murals and flags, as we have already heard, select board's looking to pause on this. Wholeheartedly agree with it. Raj, I know you had sent me a message. I'm not sure if you want to chime in at this point.
Well, I was just gonna move to table this for much the same reason I said a few minutes ago for the mission statement. We've got the community conversations going on. We've got the equity and justice sessions that Tabitha and Sue are running for municipal employees and the two boards. I'm really hoping that that the times are terrible, 4 to 6 p.m. on Mondays. It's really hard with work, but our board made quite a bit of hay out of not being invited to the police listening sessions as participants, and we haven't had great board participation at these Monday sessions. The last one's coming up on Monday. So this isn't a chiding. It's just kind of, I hope there's a way that our board can take advantage of some of the time that Sue and Tabitha are putting into this topic for us, whether it's at these Mondays or some other way, if the Monday times were difficult. I know they were hard for me to make, but hoping folks can get there, at least for the last one, and that we can look at this subject after some of that consideration's been given to the topic. So I'd move to table this as well until a future date when we can revisit it. I don't have a date in mind.
So that's the motion you're making?
I don't have to, if other people want to talk about it, I don't have to make a motion yet.
I'll second your motion, Raj. I don't feel really the need to talk about it. My position hasn't changed, so I'm happy to just table it.
I agree with Amber.
Well, we have.
Yeah, I agree. My position hasn't changed. I don't see a connection. I feel the same way we just did with the political signs in the village right away. I just don't want stuff painted on the streets in the village. I'm sorry.
I agree.
So we've got them.
Can I just say something about? I don't want to get into a debate about whether it's right or wrong, but that's kind of why I'm hoping we can get some board participation in these sessions.
All right.
It's kind of the point. I actually don't agree with the street painting either, but that's more from I just don't think we should be painting the streets point of view. But I don't agree it's necessarily political speech. And I think the conversation needs to be had, but I think it needs to be had in the context of the work that's being done currently and after that. And then see where we're at. I mean, same decision, it's the same decision.
Thank you, Raj. So we've got your motion. Amber had seconded that motion about tabling this. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Anybody opposed? All right, so that also passed unanimously. I do want to echo what Raj has said about attending the trainings. I myself have only been able to attend 1 hour of that second training, and I have to admit that even though I spent a day and a half through a leadership program discussing the same topic, I think I took away more things from that hour than I did out of that entire day and a half. Highly encourage you guys to make it if you can, and I do understand that next Mondays is also the same day as our joint meeting as it is, and I'm requesting that there be additional attendance. I'm only going to be able to make an hour of that training, the first hour as it is. I'm not going to make that second hour. I do wonder if what could be made available is if those trainings or the learnings from those trainings could actually happen during a meeting. We're already here, so for us to be attentive for those trainings, it may be a good idea to have them happen here during our regular meetings, just as a different thought. And so we had taken the records digitization grants out of the consent agenda, and we were going to move that to 5K. And Raj, you had a question on this?
Yeah, I think it's great that we got the grant. I think it's great that you're going to do the work. The work will be done. I just wondered if this meant the engaging of a commercial entity to sort of be the middleman for these records, or if this was still going to be, hosted and put out there, basically not commercialized.
Yeah, the clerk's department recently transitioned to digital land records and launched an online portal through the vendor that they've been working with all along. And these grant funds are intended to engage that same vendor to do the legwork for us to get to get 5 years of back records scanned in and then also published online with our current records. There's just not the manpower to do it in-house with the election coming up, but it's no different from what we're doing now. It's just more. And I'm sure Susan knows the most about that system, Raj. So if you have some specific questions about how it all works and interplays, she could answer those for you, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's just coming from more of a privacy. I don't think that the previous process of having to go to the building, photocopy something, I don't think that was great either. I'm just
right. Yeah. And these are all the public land records that are in the.
All right, thanks. Otherwise, this is great.
Yeah, and I was so pleased we got 20,000 for each entity because we are each have records there, so that helps.
Great. So seeing that we pulled this out of the consent agenda, does somebody want to make a motion?
Can I make a comment? Or
Yes.
Just prior to this, we had a comment from somebody living in a town outside the village on our presentation on the merger vote, and comments on how members of the community outside of the town do make some contributions to the village through fees and otherwise. But to this end, you know, just calculating the 20,000 per each community, I assume that means 20,000 is village alone, and then the other 20,000 is $11,600 of tax dollars from outside the village, and then it would be the basic, the 8,400 that are coming from that entity from the village as well. So the village would be paying 28,400, and the town outside the village would be putting 11,600, right?
I don't mean to cut you off, but these are all grant funds and there's no match. So these are funds coming from Coronavirus Recovery Act federal funding flowing through the state for the specific purpose of expanding access to land records in the event that clerk's office has to close down in the future.
My mistake, Sarah. I'm sorry. I just thought the impression I had was that we had matching funds that we had to cover, but no.
Nope, zero.
Good. No, fine. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You want to make that motion?
I'll move that we accept the funds, the CARES Act funds for record digitization. Is that sufficient motion?
There is a recommendation of trustees authorizing. All right.
I don't have it in front of me. Oh my gosh.
I'll do it. Trustees authorize staff to accept the Act 137 digitization of land records grant from the village.
Second.
Thank you, Dan. Any further discussion on that motion?
Thanks, Andrew.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Lovely. Brings us to the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Dan. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. I wanted to point out something in the reading file, that email from Don Fleury about participating in helping to mail out ballots. I'm doing a terrible job getting to that item on my computer. There's a date that's
October 7th.
Thank you. On October 7th, ballots are going to be... What?
9 a.m. it starts. It's just she's looking for assistance, but I'm working. I know I can't make it.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure everybody saw that. If anybody can make it, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to yet. If anyone can, let's help out. If we can't make it, understand work happens. We all need to pay our bills. I just want to make sure everybody saw that. Are there any other general board comments or comments from staff?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, George.
I want to make it clear on the part of the trustees that we absolutely owe Amber a birthday party at some point when the COVID crisis dissolves. I don't know how it's going to happen, Amber. I don't know when, you know. I was thinking I might sing something, but I'm not going to do that right now. That would make everyone unhappy. It's certainly going to happen. It's going to happen. Just hang in there. I know it's huge. I know it's huge for you. So I know. Yeah. Right.
George, I tried to get a barbershop quartet to come in right around 8 o'clock. That just didn't happen. And I don't know if you've seen those the Furby dressy uppy thingies.
Oh my God.
Kind of wanted to see if they had those cat ones that would come in and sing happy birthday, but
that's a good idea.
Motion to adjourn. Oh, sorry.
Exactly.
Quick.
Exactly. Oh, boy.
Nice
Happy-
job.
And with that,
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday,
Thanks.
Amber.
Happy
thank
birthday.
you. Thank you.
So if there are no other comments, if anybody wanted to adjourn on that happy note.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, thank you, Raj. Thank you, Dan. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of letting Amber enjoy her birthday in peace, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed?
Bye
All right.
bye.
Bye,
Good night,
guys.
everybody.
Good night.